Xiluobu village was as peaceful as ever. The villagers walking along the streets smiled and talked and greeted each other. As the sun went down, the day would pass soon. The man in the gray cloak avoided the crowd, walked on the deserted road, looked down at a fruit with strange threads in his hand, and murmured. That money-grubbing colonel hid this fruit in the secret vault. This must be a very important treasure. Will it grow gold coins after being buried in the soil? By the way, it must be so. She carefully looked at the fruit in her hand, and when she looked up again, she unknowingly found a luxurious villa in front of her, and sniffed her nose fiercely. Is this scent guiding me here? Then I looked around and saw that there was no one around, so I jumped high and crossed the fence of the villa. When she came to the backyard of the villa, she buried the strange fruit in a relatively soft and fertile land that looked like a medicine garden, where a lot of herbs were planted, and covered the fruit with a lot of soil, and gently patted it. Clap the dust on your hands, hide it well, come back tomorrow morning to have a look, maybe it will really grow gold coins. As she said that, her stomach growled, and the smell of hot food from the kitchen kept stirring her olfactory nerves. Satisfy your stomach before. Following the scent, I opened the kitchen window, and then closed it gently. Seeing no one around, I unceremoniously stuffed the cheese, toast, and pumpkin pie on the table into my mouth, said vaguely. Of course the task of a thief is to steal. Stealing food is my forte. Suddenly, her ears moved, her body dodged, took a few quick steps with the food plate, and hid behind the cabinet in the corner, chewing the soft pastry while listening to the movement outside. There was a crackling sound of pots and pans in the kitchen, and a very anxious voice kept urging. Hurry up, the eldest lady is sick again, hurry up and prepare a medicinal meal. Hey, the shape of this medicine is not only strange, but also smells so bad. Forget it, good medicine tastes bad, and the doctor's words are right, so hurry up. After a while, after the sound of footsteps disappeared, the man in the cloak leaned out and put the empty plate in his hand on the table. These people are too stupid, they didn't even notice that there was less food. Before she finished speaking, she stared at the fruit peel on the table with wide eyes. Wait, isn't this the strange fruit I buried just now? Then he immediately opened the window and ran back to the place where the fruit was buried just now, only to find that the fruit and the surrounding herbs had been plucked out. Sure enough, the fruit in the kitchen was buried here by himself. She covered her eyes speechlessly. Suddenly, her nose moved slightly, and she smelled a smell similar to that in the kitchen. A curiosity of what will happen to that fruit made her look up. After thinking about it for a while, she ran towards the nearby tree, jumped up like an agile cat, and squatted halfway on the thick tree trunk. Through the gaps in the undrawn curtains of the villa window, a sickly blonde girl lying on the bed can be vaguely seen, and a man who looks like a housekeeper carefully scoops up the soup with a spoon and blows it with his mouth. After 2 mouthfuls, it slipped into the girl's mouth. After a while, the sickly girl slowly opened her eyes, looking at the ceiling with a pale and weak face. Miss, you are awake. The prescription and special medicine prescribed by the doctor seemed to be very effective. The butler breathed a sigh of relief. I'm sorry to trouble you, Mei Li. Kaya looked around in confusion. Where's Clabatel? He went to buy food, but he hasn't come back yet. Mei Li helped Kaya's upper body up, and then slowly put the soup in the bowl into her mouth. Miss, be careful. It stinks. Kia covered her mouth, and the soup that was hard to swallow for a long time made her turn her head away in discomfort. Miss, the good medicine tastes bitter, you must finish it, so that your body can recover quickly. Kaya didn't listen to Mei Li's words at all. Looking at the windowsill with eyes full of joy, she subconsciously said, Usopp. Mei Li put down the bowl, walked over and opened the curtain with a bang, and there was no one outside. How come? He didn't come today. Kaya's joyful eyes instantly turned into disappointment. Miss, don't associate with that country liar anymore. Mr. Clobadel often tells me that he is not a good person, and he has another purpose to approach us. Although it's only been a few months, I don't think Usopp is a bad person. Okay, let's stop talking about this matter. Kaya didn't want to get entangled in this topic. I've been watching the library that was highly rated back then. The medical book written by Locas. Mei Li, do you think I have the talent to study medicine? Of course, miss, as long as you study hard, you will definitely become a famous doctor in the future. Kaiyui smiled crescent-like eyes. Okay, Mei Li, help me get the adventure book and the medical book. Mei Li handed the thick Ivan's adventure story and Kuroka's medical knowledge on the bookcase to the coffee table next to the bed. Miss, don't read it for too long, rest early, I will go down first. Kaya took the book on the bedside, put it on her propped knee, and opened a page with the bookmark in it. with a smile from the heart wandering on her pale face. The east coast of Sarab village. A group of pirates happily danced around the bonfire. Usopp's excellent communication, bragging ability quickly became one with the pirates, and was encouraged by the pirates to drink a lot of wine. He looked at the pirates in front of him drunkenly. I, Lord Usopp, have 80 million subordinates, known as Proud Usopp. I once took my subordinates to a mysterious island. Do you know? That island is made up of the feces of huge goldfish. It's as big as this. As he spoke, he made a gesture. Shuma seemed to be a loyal little listener, with his ears pricked up. He looked at Usopp intently. Wow, this is too powerful. It doesn't exist. It is impossible for such an island to exist, Mochi whispered beside Shuma, but the latter gave him a look of contempt. He didn't believe me. Mochi knelt down on the ground frustrated. How could it be that you were hit? Kabaji complained from the side. Looking at the happy pirates in front of him, Bucky took a sip of his wine self-consciously. It's really leisurely, Usopp. Haha. What's the use of calling me Lord Usopp? Bucky handed over a reward list and said casually, do you know this person? Pirates? Apart from you and Shanks, I don't know anyone else. Usopp took the reward list from Bucky's hand, his pupils shrank suddenly. He is. More than 2 years ago, a pirate nicknamed Bai GK Luo was captured by the Navy and publicly executed. However, the guy who was executed was just a substitute. He himself did not die, but survived. Bucky looked at Usopp, who was so shocked that he couldn't be more shocked, and said slowly, although Crow's reward list was destroyed by the Navy 3 years ago, as a colleague, I specially kept a copy. Usopp crumpled the bounty list with a heavy face, clenched his fists angrily, and ran towards the village anxiously. Kia. Kabaji asked suspiciously, Captain Bucky, why did this kid leave suddenly? Go and find the truth. Bucky looked at Usopp's back. I really want to see. What will happen if the plot is advanced? Haha, I'm really a bad guy. At night, on the top of the mountain in Zailuobu village, Usopp stood on a big locust tree next to the window of the villa. He hugged the trunk of the locust tree with one hand, tapped the window lightly with the other hand, and whispered, Kia, Kia. A light came on inside the window, and a delicate figure gently pushed open the window. It's you, Usopp. Kaya, who was wearing pale yellow pajamas, showed a sickly beauty on her face, with a smile on the corner of her mouth, revealing 2 shallow dimples. You're finally here. Sorry to disturb your sleep. Usopp showed a trace of guilt on his face, but quickly covered it up. Now is not the time to talk about this, Kia. I want to tell you something. Kratbel, he is a pirate, a big pirate with a reward of 16 million. Get away from him. He will kill you. The smile on Kaya's face gradually froze. Usopp, your wine smells so strong. Did you drink too much? No. Kaya, I didn't lie to you. Kaya looked at Usopp. His eyes seemed to be looking at a stranger who had nothing to do with it, and the relationship between the two seemed to be broken at this moment. Usopp, I like the lies you used to make up, but why do you say such things? No, I didn't want to get revenge on him. By the way, I have his reward list. Usopp hurriedly rummaged through the brown package he carried with him. The anxiety on his face became more and more obvious. Why didn't you see me? It's on the coast. Kaya, you must believe me. He jumped under the tree and quickly said, I'm going to find evidence right away. I want to prove it to you. After speaking, he quickly ran out of the courtyard from a reserved hole in the grass. Usopp. Kia watched Usopp's figure gradually disappear, and finally closed the 2 windows back, leaning against the windowsill with a body that was so weak that it might collapse at any time, supporting it vigorously, and her thoughts were flying. Kratbel is a pirate. How is this possible? You are lying to me. I will wait for you here. I want to know if what you said is true. Just a moment later, the sound of knocking on the window came again, and Kia opened the window precariously. She helped her drooping hot forehead and said weakly, Usopp, are you back? A man with a very cunning face leaned against the tree trunk, with his hands on the back of his head. He didn't come back. Kaya raised her head, and when she saw the person in front of her, she exclaimed in shock, quickly covered her mouth, and took 2 steps back. Don't be so loud. I can be counted as Usopp's friend. Bucky glanced at the other party sideways. Her image was similar to that in the original book. She was a very sick and weak woman, and Bucky was a little suspicious. A gust of wind would knock the girl to the ground. Usopp. Asked you to come here. Kaya said softly. No. I'm a pirate. Bucky said casually, crossing his legs. But. Kaya's eyes fell on Bucky's empty calf, with a trace of regret and unbearable. It hurts, your foot is gone. Bucky rubbed the bridge of his nose speechlessly, took out a bounty slip from his body, separated his right hand from his body, and put the bounty slip on the windowsill. What Usopp threw at me, I did a small favor and sent it to him. Kaya looked at the weird palm on the windowsill, her pupils suddenly dilated, and she screamed, "Ah!" Footsteps sounded quickly in the corridor of the villa. The man in a suit with round glasses pushed open the door, looked at the window blown open by the wind and Kia, who was sitting on the ground with some emotional breakdown, and looked around vigilantly. Then he walked to Kia's side with a panicked face. "Miss Kia, are you okay?" Kia lowered her eyes, and she pinched the bounty list in her right hand and hid it in the gap between her thigh and the ground, with a faint smile on her pale face. "I'm fine. Clapbar, you go out first. Well, I feel a little uncomfortable if there are people next to me." Clapbar pushed the round glasses with his wrist, raised his head and looked at the big tree outside the window. A glint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Bucky's body suspended in the air had already been retracted to his feet on the ground. He picked his ears with his little finger, and turned around to glance at the room with lights on. The screaming of the woman is really unbearable. It really is the countryside of Donghai, and I have never seen a devil fruit before. After taking 2 steps, he looked at the shadow of the bush beside him. "You probably haven't seen it either, have you?" There was no movement in the bushes. "How should I put it? I saw you on the tree in that manner just now, but you hid so fast, little thief meow Nami." Bucky walked over. "I actually don't know yet. When will you hide? I have a hobby of climbing trees." The leaves on the tree washed down, and a figure suddenly appeared from the shadows, striking like a bolt of lightning. Bucky swayed, avoiding the seemingly furry but dangerous palms that were about to stick to his chest, and the moment he passed by, he lifted the man's cloak with his separated hand. Under the moonlight, the man's appearance was faintly visible. Under the white fluffy fur, a painter's cap made of gray wool is slanted between the 2 pointed ears, a pair of green agate-like eyes sparkle with a dull expression, and he is wearing an off-white short shirt and hot pants. Why does it look so cute? No, why is it a cat? Bucky looked at the guy in front of him who was completely unexpected. "You are Nami? Give back the cloak to the cat, you bastard pirate." "No, you answer my question first. What's your name?" "I won't let a pirate know that my name is Mikkel." She froze for a moment, covering her mouth in a hurry. "So, are you chasing the wrong person?" After thinking about it, even if it is the butterfly effect caused by myself, it is impossible for Nami to undergo such a big change and steal the Navy's treasure without authorization. "Did you eat a devil fruit?" Bucky looked at the other's strange face, not as scary as Usopp said, but unexpectedly cute. Mikkel bared his teeth and claws. "What a mess, I'm a descendant of Lord Catgod, you idiot pirate. Not a devil fruit power user." With a flash of light in Bucky's eyes, he caught the bulging cloth bag hidden in the shadow on the thick tree trunk with a corner exposed, and said with his eyes turned, "Okay, then you return the fruit to me, which is what I put on the Navy ship before. Things, we both clean up." As he said that, he put one hand behind his back, separated secretly, and after going around for a certain distance, he flew towards the cloth bag on the tree. Mikkel's 2 furry cat ears kept trembling. "I don't know what fruit, tell me quickly. Do you know Nami? Are you her friend or enemy? She stole the treasure on your ship. That's why you went looking for her. Hey, use your dirty, vile, shameless, mean and tricky mouth to speak out." Actually. Bucky slowed down his tone, and quickly approached the round package with his left hand. The moment his left hand grasped the package opening, Mikkel turned his head vigilantly. Dense blue lightning flashed from the palm of his hand, and suddenly turned into an afterimage, rushing towards the thick tree trunk where the package was placed. Bucky's left hand was holding the package and suspended in the air, secretly said, "Oops," the palm with blue lightning was about to grab his hand. The detached left hand turned in the air, instantly changing the trajectory of the flight. A subtle blue light flashed, and the large package, stabbed and pulled, and a long hole was broken at the top. At the same time, the heavy volume made the cloth strip on the other side unable to support it, and it was torn apart. The whole bag of parcels with its opening completely open fell to the ground, spilling out glittering gold, silver and jewels. Fur tribe. Bucky withdrew his hand quickly, moved his left index finger that was a little numb after being rubbed by the other party just now, glanced around the ground, and frowned. "Why are there no devil fruits?" "You mean that it was eaten by a girl?" Mikkel stood in front of the package, his voice became indifferent, and his 2 piercing eyes were fixed on Bucky. "Then you answer my question, pirate. It was eaten by a girl. What kind of stupid thing did this cat do?" Bucky muttered to himself, looked up at Mikkel who was fully prepared to fight, and spread his hands. "Well, Let me tell you the truth. Actually, I am the fiancé of Nami's childhood sweetheart, but I don't seem to have heard Nami mention you, and I don't know why you are so obsessed with my fiancé. Hey, how is it possible? Nami is my savior and good friend. How could she never mention my name? Did you not pay attention? Mikkel explained anxiously. Bucky touched his chin. Is that so? It seems that because of my arrival, some changes have been instigated. Mikkel was stunned for a moment, as if he had come to his senses, and said angrily, Pirate liar. Nami obviously doesn't have any childhood sweetheart fiancé. Yet you actually cheated the feelings of an ignorant young cat. You are simply a devil. Bucky shrugged, threw the cloak in his hand on the ground, turned and left, and waved his hands. I'm sorry to disturb you, but my goal is not you. Hey, wait. Mikkel pointed his index finger at Bucky's back. You coward just want to run away like this. Don't you have any dignity as a man? Your soul will go to hell sooner or later. What awaits you is the infinite darkness that devours the void. It's really not an ordinary chatterbox. Bucky continued to walk forward in a nonchalant manner. Mikkel hurriedly picked up the scattered treasures on the ground, and said angrily to Bucky's back. I'm not talkative, you bastard with a red nose. I'm a great nobleman, and I'm a descendant of His Majesty the Cat God. I stop. The sky was getting brighter, and two figures, one in front and one behind, walked on the road to the coast. Really, why do creatures like Fur Tribe appear in the East China Sea? Bucky walked in front, turned his head and glanced at Mikkel, who seemed to be provocatively following behind him, and after thinking about it carefully, there was nothing unexpected. Yes, isn't there a bear in Trafalgar Law's pirate group who was born in the North Sea? Don't follow me. The static electricity of the Fur Clan is a bit of a headache. Just take those treasures, I won't get your idea. Bucky glanced back from the corner of his eyes, but, you don't overestimate the cultivation of pirates. Red-nosed pirate. What is your relationship with Nami? If you don't tell me, I'll blow your head, Mikkel said with a bit of bluff while carrying the package on his back. She will not provoke the Navy, but she will not be timid in the face of scattered pirates. Don't call me Red Nose, Bucky turned around and said angrily. Then he let out a deep breath, pretended to be surprised and looked up at the sky. Hey, flying saucer? Huh. UFO, where is it? Mikkel looked back curiously. By the way, what is a UFO? Looking back again, Bucky's has turned into a small black spot, leaving behind the wind and dust along the way, which is about to disappear from her vision. You bastard with a red nose, you're playing tricks on me, don't run away. Mikkel stamped his feet and chased after him in shame. The top of the mountain in Sarab village. The window on the second floor of the villa was pushed open, and the warm sunlight fell into the girl's boudoir. Kia woke up early, leaning against the windowsill and staring blankly at the big tree in the courtyard with a lot of thoughts. After a while, she looked up. Look at the slightly exposed sun. Usopp didn't come back last night. He should be with that strange pirate. He is such an adventurous person. Maybe he will go to sea with that pirate. Kei-ya looked down at the birds on the windowsill in a daze. I feel much better. The doctor's medicine is really effective. Everyone is such a good person and cares so much about me. How can I be alone? People escaped. But Crabble is really a pirate. What is he doing for? Who can tell me? What should I do? Dong dong dong, it was a knock on the door. Please come in. Kia's voice trembled slightly. Crabatail pushed open the door and walked in with a dining car full of toast and milk. He pushed the round glasses with his wrist, walked to Kia's side, and closed the window forcefully. A few birds on the window sill scattered. Miss, blowing the wind is not conducive to your recovery. For the sake of your health, please don't open the windows again. Even if you don't think about yourself, you still have to think about the deceased master and madam. Kei-ya froze, didn't say much, just gave a soft hum, lowered her eyes, and returned to the bed with the support of Clatbar. Although Kia tried his best to conceal his emotions, Cratbull keenly felt the subtle changes in the other party's attitude. He was born as a pirate and had been exiled at sea for many years. He has a very keen sense of smell for external things, otherwise he would not have become such a one of the most trusted people in the villa. Pushing the round glasses with his wrist, a very kind and friendly smile appeared on his shadowed face, and he put his right hand on the back of Kia's hand. Time flies so fast, it has been more than 2 years. Recall the days when we were sad and laughed together. When we were shopping together, I followed you with my bags all over my body. When you were sick, I was with you day and night. By my side, I take care of you in every possible way. When I am free, I happily listen to you tell the stories I read in the book and laugh together. Clatbull recalled with flickering eyes, with a gentle face. I put all my heart on you, you are like my sister. I really want to just look at you like this, and watch you get married all the time, watching you grow old. Clatbar. Kia's face was a little moved. Clatbull pushed down the glasses with his wrist and put them in his hands, his voice a little mournful. I lost my parents when I was very young, and I was drifting on the sea alone, struggling to survive in that cruel sea. At that time, I didn't know what I was living for, and I couldn't find the value of my own existence. Until later, during an injury, Master and Madam rescued me. I really felt the warmth of family. Cratbull covered his eyes with his hands. I'm sorry, miss. I shouldn't say this in front of you, but I can't control my emotions. I just want to return my heart to peace, and do as simple ordinary people said, sobbing softly. Clatbar, stop talking. Kya patted the other party's back distress-edly. I see, I believe you. A long time. Clatbull wiped the tears from his eyes with his wrist, put on his glasses, and recovered his emotions. Miss, breakfast is here, you can eat it as soon as possible. I will go out first, please have a good rest. After speaking, he got up and left, closing the door slowly. He turned away, eyes buried in shadows, a sly sneer formed on the corners of his mouth. After today, everything will return to normal, however, it is safer to go there in person. Near the east coastline of Sarab village. Mikkel, who covered his figure with a cloak, faced Buggy. Buggy was a little helpless. Why are you pestering me? Mikkel said confidently. Because you haven't answered Nami's matter. You bastard pirate. Why did you follow Nami here? Don't underestimate me. Nami's matter is my matter. You lecherous, are you trying to get Nami's idea? Hearing the effect of her chattering all by herself, Buggy plucked his ears. Mochi, is there any way to deal with cats? Mochi rubbed his chin in thought, then took out a ball of wool from his body. Captain Buggy, try this. Buggy took the ball of wool, looked at Mikkel, and threw the ball of wool in a parabola in doubt. Hey, liar pirate, you think I'll let you go without saying a word? In the middle of Mikkel's speech, his face showed a beating look, and his two green agate-like eyes slowly opened wide, seeming to be shining, and he jumped towards the ball of wool like a kitten. Curly, Curly, it's so fun. She squinted her eyes and kept spinning the ball of wool on the ground. Her ears kept shaking. Her face showed a blush that she couldn't help. She looked very obedient and well-behaved. In the final analysis, it really is a cat. Buggy wiped the cold sweat from his brow. It's so cute, so cute. I really want to raise a cat like this. I can't take it anymore. How can there be such a cute cat? Foul, too foul. Several pirates of the Buggy Pirates clenched their fists by their mouths, acting like girls. Dong dong dong. Buggy withdrew his hot fists, and several pirates with big red bumps on their heads lowered their heads in shame and said, Captain Buggy, we were wrong. Get ready to go to sea. It doesn't make sense to stay in such a small rural village. Let's continue to move west. Yes. No. Mikkel reacted, holding a ball of yarn in one hand like a baby, and pointing at Buggy and the others with the other hand. You haven't answered my question, rude pirate, tell me quickly. As he said that, he began to play with the ball of yarn irresistibly again. Juju, Juwan. Buggy wanted to say something, but Shu Ma, who was watching with one hand, said first. Buggy, a sea beast ship is coming. The hazy black shadow on the sea in the distance gradually grew larger, gradually approaching the shore, and a cat-like skull was painted on the sail. Black Cat Pirates. The Black Cat Pirates. Buggy has some impressions of this skull flag. On the one hand, it is the impression in his own memory. The pirate group led by the pirate Zhang Gao, who has a bounty of 9 million, is quite famous in the East China Sea. On the other hand, it comes from the impression in the comics. The original Captain Beiji Kella, who is now the housekeeper of the Hilltop Villa, is a man who easily kills the soldiers of a warship, and is quite resourceful at the same time. The Black Cat boat quickly docked, and was juxtaposed with the Bakudop. At the same time, it collided intentionally or unintentionally, and the two boats stirred up layers of waves. The 60 or 70 pirates on the ship jumped onto the shore like dumplings, surrounded by a man in the center wearing heart-shaped glasses and a black cloth hat on both sides. The man yawned a little sleepily, and then picked up the circular saw hanging by a rope. Listen. I'm going to say, 1, 2, Zango, next, and I'll be wide awake. Zango put the circular saw used as a hypnotic tool in front of him and shook it back and forth, 1, 2, Zango. Then, shaking his head, he retracted the circular saw. With his head lowered slightly, one hand was placed on the black cloth cap, the other hand was placed on his stomach, his body was swinging very rhythmically, humming a light tune, his footsteps moved backwards like walking in spacecom. After circling around in place, he snapped his fingers. Perfect. Hey, do it again. Do it again. Shuma was dumbfounded, and raised his hands excitedly, just like a die-hard fan meeting a passionate idol. Zhang Gao tapped his right foot to the ground, bent his knee forward slightly, and looked at Shuma with his outstretched hand, and made an extremely coquettish gesture like an electric shock. You are a person who knows how to appreciate guy. I like you, kid. The pirate with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks said impatiently, Captain, don't waste time. Hurry up and order to solve the matter. Otherwise, there will be a commotion later. Zhang Gao's expression suddenly became serious. You are right. If you arouse that man's anger, there will be no place for us to stand in this sea. Let's make a quick decision. I was planning to leave, but I want to come up to make trouble. Buggy looked at the pirates who were about to move around in front of him, and then looked at his weak lineup: 1 cannibal, 1 acrobatic swordsman, and 12 8-rate pirates. No matter how you look at it, it's my side that wins. Captain Buggy, leave it to me. Kabaji looked at the animal trainer who had just been given the task by Buggy and disappeared, suppressed the doubts in his heart, and said bravely, even if you don't tell me, I'll give it to you. Buggy shrugged casually. It's just some miscellaneous soldiers. The only person on this island who can pose a slight threat to him is Beiji Kella. He can kill a soldier from a warship, which shows that his strength is very good, and his foot speed is even faster. It's more about strength. I don't know which is faster, his unique footwork, silent step, or spoon, compared to the shaved that he can use at present. Brothers, this bastard actually looked down on us. We killed him. The pirates of the Black Cat Pirates raised their weapons and rushed towards Kabaji with a passionate look. Return to nothingness. Kabaji took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and walked forward slowly, making the sound of clogs stepping on the ground. Pirates in front rushed over one after another, or slashed horizontally or vertically, and fell towards his body mercilessly, trying to poke a few transparent holes or split the arrogant bastard in front of him into several pieces. Cut. Kabaji walked slowly among the crowd, like shopping in a busy street, surrounded by bustling tourists chatting and laughing, but he walked alone like a wandering warrior who was incompatible with the world. When he opened his eyes again, his body had passed through the group of pirates, and the tip of the big sharp knife in his hand was aimed at the hole of the scabbard, and it was gently inserted into the scabbard. His body just now. Ah! As the pirate spoke, he suddenly made a heart-piercing sound, and the sudden burst of severe pain in his chest made him fall to the ground uncontrollably. What's going on? The other pirate was dumbfounded, blood suddenly spurted out of his mouth, and he fell down on his head. All the pirates suddenly went numb, and absurd emotions welled up in their hearts. Clang. Kabaji held the hilt of the sword with a backhand posture, the blade was fully sheathed, and there was a crisp impact sound. He raised his head slightly, and a gloomy voice came out of his mouth. Minge. In an instant, 70 or 80 pirates sprayed out a bewitching blood spray at the same time, or fell forward feebly, or fell sideways unconsciously. Such a huge number of people made the sand and dust on the entire beach agitate and fly everywhere. Kabaji's sword moves reminded Baki, who was outside the circle, of a certain National Guard in the West Sea. This surprise attack force is famous for its fast sword and extreme slash. If there is no pain, the movement of the body often involves the wound, and only then will I realize that I have been injured. And the most famous sword skill in the surprise attack force is No Song San Ding, humming a little tune in his nose, walking 3 steps. The moment the sword is closed, the enemy will be fatally injured. Kabaji should use the paper painting to feel the airflow around him, avoid the enemy's attack, and at the same time reduce the opponent's sense of pain by covering up the presence of the big sharp knife when he uses the knife. The false pain on the enemy erupts when the knife is closed at the end. Although the pain will not really increase, the illusion is often more effective than the real pain. It is similar to the nose song sanding. In the past year, he has worked hard in his own cultivation. Kabaji turned his head slowly. The originally self-willed and unrestrained figure suddenly collapsed after he showed a complacent and somewhat idiotic smile. He gave himself a thumbs up, with a look of playing tricks. Captain Buggy, how about it, won't it be handsome? His white teeth gleamed brightly in the morning sun. Buggy, who originally wanted to applaud him, silently put down his hands that were about to close together. Zhang Gao, who was also waiting and watching, suddenly changed color. Sweat dripped from his forehead to the ground. That's great, this bastard swordsman. If Captain Crow sees this look, even all of us will be killed. At this time, the sound of singing and singing came from the boat. Hey, Buggy, something is wrong. What's wrong? Everyone seems to have been killed by one person. That's really too dangerous. After hearing this voice, Zango's flustered expression calmed down. By the way, I still have a trump card. Come down, brother Catman, Zango yelled towards the boat. Two black figures jumped down from the deck and landed on the beach. The figure on the right was a thin man with green hair, while the figure on the left was a rough and fat man with black and white eye sockets. Are you calling us Captain Zango? The thin green-haired man licked his wrist, and then put on a funny pose. We are Sam. The rough fat man answered the words familiarly. Dot and Buzzy, the two become cat brothers, join us. Zango looked at Kabaji in front of him. Budge, Sam, as you can see, there are people in the way, kill them. Sam and Buggy looked at each other, sweating like they were frightened. We're just boatmen. How could we do such a thing? Zango yelled. Stop talking, go, Sam. Sam was almost crying, and said aggrievedly, I know, I'll go right away. He raised his head, raised his hands high, and ran towards Kabaji full of flaws. Damn it. I'll kill you with this claw right now. A calm and cunning gaze appeared from the corner of his eyes. Soon, there are still 30 meters left. When he relaxes his vigilance, I will use my cat's claws to disembowel him. This stupid pirate must not have imagined that my acting skills have reached this point. It's so amazing. What's wrong with him? He was injured in the battle just now. It's good, he's dead. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of Kabaji, who suddenly fell to his knees on the ground, and Sam suddenly lowered his head, staring at Kabaji like a hunting beast, and let out a smirk. Then I'm not welcome. The dexterous body suddenly entered a fighting state, and the two palms wearing cat's claw gloves bent into claws, and flew towards Kabaji like lightning. Kabaji covered his chest with one hand, his face showed uncontrollable pain like a drowning person, and the next moment, Sam's hands pierced Kabaji's body like two sharp spears. The movements of the two were still at the same time, and time seemed to be frozen at this moment. Zango touched the black cloth cap unnaturally. This trick again. Bug looked at the scene in front of him calmly. The swordsman is dead. Puff. Where the two meet, hot blood gushes out like a fountain. A sly smile appeared on the corner of Sam's mouth. It's rare for me to pretend to be a good cat, but it seems a bit redundant. I'm Sam of the Cat Brothers. Yeah, it's too much. Kabaji raised his eyes. You better understand, this blood is from your body. Sam looked down at the nearly 50-centimeter stab wound on his chest, and was stunned. Strong dizziness and pain surged into his brain, and he couldn't stand up. He took 2 steps back, and a mouthful of blood spewed out from the corner of his mouth. You mean bastard. Aren't you the one who wanted to play tricks at the beginning? Kabaji stood up nonchalantly, touched the cat's paw marks on the 2 cuffs. When you pretend to be scared, you can't have a little bit of a sneaky expression. For guys who want to play petty tricks, it is natural to retaliate with despicableness. On this point, there is a huge difference between you and me. Sam. Buggy looked excited, and rushed towards Kabaji quickly, trying to cover Sam, but halfway through the march, he seemed to see something extremely scary, and his body gave out instinctive fear. Cold sweat. He stopped again and again. Following his gaze, on the road above the slope, a man wearing round glasses and a suit and leather shoes was holding a long special bag in one hand, and put the other hand in his trouser pocket indifferently. The person who came pushed the round glasses with his wrist, and looked coldly at the battle situation below. It seems that I still overestimated you. I didn't expect to see you in 2 years. You have not fallen to this level. Captain Crow. Zango wiped the sweat from his forehead, and couldn't help arguing, but their leader is the great Eastern Sea Pirate with a reward of 10 million. So what? Crow pushed his glasses with his wrist, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Look at your embarrassing appearance. I really didn't expect you to be so weak and incompetent. Zango murmured in a low voice, weak and incompetent. Sam covered the knife wound on his body and tried his best to keep his body from falling down. He coughed up 2 mouthfuls of blood, and his body trembled angrily. We have defeated countless pirates in the past 2 years, and we have been exercising to kill people all the time. Your skills, Captain Crow, you actually said it so easily. Buggy raised his hands in cat's claw gloves on his chest, and rubbed the 10 sharp thorns that were nearly 50 centimeters long. How dare you say it, Captain Crow? We admit that you were really strong 3 years ago. Oh. Crow looked at Brother Catman indifferently. What are you trying to say? You who have been blank for 3 years. Bug's bloated body burst out at an astonishing speed that was completely opposite to it, and his eyes were bloodshot as he rushed towards Crow. I can easily kill you by myself. Don't. Zango's order still didn't stop Buzzy from sprinting, but the latter's speed and movements became even faster. Seeing Buzzy getting closer, Crow raised the long special bag calmly. You are no longer our captain. Even if we kill you here, it won't matter. Buggy raised 2 cat claws and scratched them frantically. The special strip bag was torn into 10 pieces, and Crow disappeared from sight without a sound. What? Bug's face was instantly covered with cold sweat, and he turned around suddenly, behind. There is no sign of Crow in the field of vision. Budge, be careful. Sam yelled in panic, and finally fell to the ground unconsciously after finishing speaking. Bug choked for breath, and the coldness crackled from the back of his back to the top of his head. I heard that you want to kill me. Crow appeared at some point, with his arms around Buzzy, and his nearly 1-meter-long cat's claws were tightly pressed against the trembling ladder's chest. His expression was indifferent. Gloomy, compared to 3 years ago. My skills are not very flexible, and after 3 years, my heart seems to have become kinder. I don't want to get any boring evidence on my hands. I will give you 5 minutes. The sharp cat claws of his hands left Bug, and said without emotion, if it can't be solved in 5 minutes, whether it is you or them, I will send you to hell with my own hands. Bug gasped for breath, quickly communicated with Sam, who was seriously injured and almost lost his fighting power, with frightened eyes, and looked up at Zango. Captain. Let me obtain unparalleled strength. Please, Captain, let me take Sam's share. Since you insist on asking. Zango pressed the black cloth cap on top of his head, then use the secret hypnosis that you have trained before, which can increase your body's strength by 20 times, so that we don't have to diets. Look at me, Sam. Zango roared, swinging the circular saw in his hand. Zango's super hypnosis. Awaken your power. Sam focused his eyes on the circular saw. His eyes stared like copper bells, his bare arm muscles were protruding, his veins were densely covered like tangled tree roots, and his rough figure suddenly grew taller. He seemed to be unable to control the strength in his body, and stepped heavily on the ground as if to vent. Boom. The rocky ground that the footsteps stepped on was instantly cracked, and cracks about 1 centimeter wide centered on the footprints and extended several meters outward. Buzzy looked at Kabaji with a ferocious expression. With this power, I only need 1 minute to finish you, and then quickly kill the rest of the obstacles. Kabaji, do you need help? Buggy looked at him with his head stuck in his head. I don't need it. Well, you don't need to say anything, I know what you mean. Kabaji hesitated to speak, and squeezed out a few words. Captain Buggy, you really know me so well. You still dare to be distracted. Go to hell. Bug jumped up high, raised his right foot high, and fell down with terror and swift force at the same time. Boogie's scary move, cat kill. Kabaji's eyes were solemn, his right hand was tightly grasped on the handle of the knife, and the turbulent wind from top to bottom blew the hair covering the right half of his face to the back of his head. At this moment, his body was like a slender wicker, moving his steps along with the sound of the wind, and shifted to a position 3 meters away. Suddenly, the knife was drawn out of its sheath. Sakura blowing snow is like heavy snow, falling slowly and disorderly, and the white light suddenly rises, like a beautiful scene in a prosperous age. Under the snow-white knife light, Bougie's falling body cracked the 20-meter-long rocky ground into dozens of pieces of different sizes, and the stone chips and dust immediately filled the air. Kabaji evaded the opponent's attack in an instant and cut 6 knives accurately, then quickly jumped out of his position in the dust to avoid the sunken ground. He thought that the opponent would die, but suddenly he had a bad feeling, and the strong wind hit the door directly. Clang. He hastily drew out the saber to block in front of him. A terrifying force hit the saber and passed into his palm. The tiger's mouth numbed suddenly, and Sakura Chuishui almost fell off his hand. Just as he was resisting this cat's claw, another cat's claw came one after another, blasting towards his chest with lightning speed, and instantly sent him flying away who was caught off guard. Boom. Kabaji's body was embedded into the mountain wall like a cannonball, and the solid mountain wall couldn't help cracking, and the gravel rolled down. Buzzy snorted, trying to keep his breathing even, so as to delay the effect and time of hypnosis. He turned around wearily, and looked at Buggy and other pirates with a grim expression. One has been solved, and the rest should be much easier. It's really dangerous. If you don't hide in time, all the bones in your body will be broken. A voice came from the ashes on the stone wall. Kabaji's clothes were torn, and the 5 scratches on his chest were clearly visible. His mouth overflowed with blood, and he walked out from the mountain wall. Looking at Buzzy, who was bleeding profusely but still able to move freely, he said in a puzzled way, "No wonder you didn't fall down after receiving my 6 knives. It seems that your thick fat saved you." Bug trampled on the ground with both feet, showing an unbelievably ferocious expression. You're still alive. Yes, but next, you will be the one who will die. Kabadji put Sakura Fukishue upright in front of him. Although the power of this move, supernatural, is small, you will feel its horror. Stop talking big. This time I will definitely kill you. Bug roared and rushed towards Kabadji. Kabadji's figure swayed back and forth, lingering and thrusting at Buggy's side quickly. His figure disappeared as if escaping into the void, and appeared in another direction in an instant. The Sakura Fubuki in his hand was sometimes like a short nail clipper. Sometimes it was like a number of nail clippers. The 10-meter-long knife creates an astonishingly abrupt illusion. His movements seemed to disrupt the entire space. Although his body appeared on the left, the Sakura Fubuki he held in his hand would stab at the right, and every minute and every second was like scraping scales. There were light marks left on his body. The irritable Buggy is like an ant on a hot pot, spinning around, facing Kabadji who is swimming around him like a loach. He has nothing to do. In the sequelae of restlessness, anger and physical exhaustion, his speed and strength also began to gradually decline. Crow, standing on the hillside, looked at the battle in front of him, pushed his glasses with his wrist, and said coldly, "There are still 3 minutes." Suddenly, his footsteps fluctuated slightly, and he used silent steps to avoid the lead bullets that passed close to him. Then he looked back at the person behind him. His expression finally changed. "Kia, Miss Kia." Kaya supported Usopp, who was physically exhausted and bruised, standing among the trees. Clatbar. "No, I should call you Captain Crow." Kaya tightly twisted the flesh on her palm with her thumb, and an indescribable sense of loss rose from her heart. "I clearly trust you so much. I am really happy to spend the past 2 years. Why did you make such a move? Kind of thing. You unscrupulous pirate, if it wasn't for the onion to spread the message." Usopp gritted his teeth and looked at Crow. "I realized from the beginning that you are not a good person, Kia. Don't pity this kind of person. Man, he was premeditated from beginning to end." Crow looked at Usopp with some surprise. "I really didn't expect. Your vitality is really tenacious. I thought you had died in that wilderness last night. Originally, I still wanted to kill you, blame the death on the pirates, but now it's a headache." Usopp said with firm eyes, "I won't die so easily. It is my responsibility to protect this place and Kia. Don't underestimate, proud Usopp. It's really noisy. Long nose." Chloe didn't show any emotion, and gave Usopp a playful look, then set his eyes on Kia. "Miss Kia, when I saw you studying with medical books, I always thought you were joking. It seems that it is not just that simple. It is really hard to believe that this guy was saved by you, but there seems to be no other explanation." Clatbar. Why don't you answer me directly? Don't you dare." Kia bit her lower lip, her face turned pale. "Don't dare?" Crow's face became stiff, and he gently pushed the round glasses with his wrist. "I used to be Captain Crow. I actually want to smile modestly at a crying little girl, even if I don't want to. I want to please you in every possible way, can you understand? These days of humiliation, you were born rich and carefree. How can the worrying lady understand the peace that a pirate who is displaced at sea wants to have peace of mind?" Kaya trembled slightly. "I see. I will give you all my property, please leave this village." Crow smiled slightly. "You don't know, what I want is not just property." Boom. The loud sound of a heavy object falling to the ground interrupted Crow's words, and everyone's eyes were now on Buggy, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death. The battle is over. Standing on the slope, Kabadji choked out blood from the corner of his mouth, and squinted at the people on the slope. "It's so boring that people can hear cocoons in their ears, so I have to hurry up and end this battle." Indeed, it's already been 5 minutes. Crow pushed the round glasses with his wrist, the cat's claws on his fingers intertwined, and faced Usopp coldly. "Although the plan has deviated from the track I pre-designed, but it's not important. This man is very important to you. Kaya. I'll kill him, and then." Crow took a silent step and disappeared in place. When he reappeared, 5 cat claws nearly 1 meter long stabbed Usopp. At the same time, in the cabin of the Bakudop, Mochi crossed his arms and leaned against the corner of the wall, while Rikiro, the lion beside him, picked his nose lazily, with a dull expression and drooling from the corner of his mouth. "Let me pass quickly," a man with chest hair and hair. Mikkel, who was hiding under the cloak, accused him righteously. "Chest hair. Hair. One Piece man." Mochi muttered a few words in shock, clenched his fists with both hands, and roared loudly. "You strange creature, don't call me that. You dare to say that I'm a strange creature, but I'm a descendant of the cat god. Unreasonable man. I want to take away your humble maggot-like life." The hands suddenly flickered and emitted dense layers of static electricity, and the body curled up slightly like a cat with fried hair. Although it is said that the cabin is not a place to fight, but if you insist on fighting, then I have no choice but to accompany you. Then. Go to hell. Mikkel narrowed his eyes dangerously, and jumped out suddenly. Master Mochi's superkiller secret technique. Mochi took out something prepared, and said with a serious face, also known as cat training crazy battle. Whoosh. The ball of yarn rolled into a ball was thrown out in a parabola. Mikkel's eyes kept widening, as if they were shining, and his manic look disappeared, like an obedient and well-behaved kitten squinting its eyes, and pounced on the wool ball in the air. Rolling around on the ground with the ball of wool, rolling. Curly, so cute. Ha ha. Mochi put his hands on his hips, laughing exaggeratedly with contempt. Well, you know how powerful I am, you stupid kitten. Mikkel carefully held the ball of wool in his hand, with an angry expression on his face. It's too abominable to use such a despicable method. How can you use this kind of move? The cat is so mad. As he said that, he hugged the ball of wool in his hand with staring eyes and stroked it involuntarily. I'm not as despicable as a person named Kabaji, but he is despicable. In comparison, I'm just a drop in the bucket. Hey, it should be called a world of difference. Stop talking. Mochi roared angrily, don't even think about the treasure on board. Mikkel rolled his eyes all over the place, moved his footsteps slightly to the left, and Mochi also moved along with him, blocking in front of him, just as she rushed forward eagerly. While Mochi flaunted, he picked up a ball of wool in his hand. Well. What a man with tight defenses. It really makes it impossible for cats to attack. Mikkel gritted his teeth, looking like he was going to eat people. Actually. Mochi said, we can make a deal. What deal? What do you want to say? Despicable man. The Black Cat pirate ship next to this ship must have a lot of treasure inside. If we work together. On the slopes of the coast. Usopp was stunned, clutching a bloody scratch on his shoulder. Kia. You. Kaya looked at Crow with a pale face, feeling very terrified and uneasy about what happened in front of her, but her strong sense of crisis made her try her best to support Usopp back. The strange liquid completely blocked Crow's vision. He wiped his glasses with his palm, but the stains on them could not be removed at all. At that moment just now, when Kia moved his right hand, a film bubble suddenly surrounded Usopp's body. When this bubble made Crow approach the ladder, the rhythm of the silent step was instantly disrupted. Moreover, the elasticity of the film bubble was surprisingly tough, which slowed down his stabbing action, which allowed Usopp to escape his life by a narrow margin, only hurting his arm. What did you do? Kailuo looked cold and surprised. I have served you for such a long time, and I never thought that you, who are so weak, have such a skill. Kia bit her lip, supported Usopp, shook her head and backed away. I don't know. Zango. Crow said coldly, think of a way to get the eldest lady to sign the will. If this is the case, I will let you survive among these people. Gollum. Zangao swallowed his saliva, sweating profusely on his forehead. He dared not neglect to reply. I see, Captain Crow, I will follow your orders right away. Said. Rushed over quickly. Wait a minute. Huma jumped down from the rock wall beside him, pointed to the yawning Bucky, and stopped Zango, although the dance ingredients are very interesting. But Bucky said he can't let you go. Bucky stood up and stretched his waist. Yeah, let's stretch our muscles. Zhang Gao clamped two circular saws between the index finger and middle finger of both hands, and said with a gloomy face, I don't have the time to talk to you here now, since you are looking for death, then I will get serious. Alright. Shu Ma spread his hands. Little devil, go to hell. Zhang Gao waved his hands, and the circular saw turned into an afterimage, and quickly cut towards Shuma. Shuma retracted his hands to the sides, and there were two things in his palms instantly. He played with the circular saw casually in his hands. What? There is no strength at all. Zango's eyes widened, his mouth was tightly closed and he did not speak. He looked down at his wrinkled finger joints for a moment. Only those who have practiced this kind of boomerang will know that this weapon not only has the consideration of eyesight, but also has a strong impact on fingers. The strength of the body also have extremely high requirements, and it takes years and years of coordination of the fingers and hand muscles to exert its power. So there are very few people who use this weapon. In addition to hypnosis, the circular saw that can instantly cut through a tree with a radius of 1 meter is also his nirvana. How did the young kid on the opposite side receive it? Okay, I'll return it to you. Shuma waved his hands, and the two circular saws were fired back at Zango. Zangao was fully focused, His hands and fingers were slightly bent, and he was about to take his own weapon. Suddenly, his pupils shrank, and two afterimages intersected with his hands in an instant. The strong wind brought his black cloth cap to the ground, revealing his curly hair. Suddenly, the approaching footsteps of the god of death made his mind go blank, his feet softened, and he knelt on the ground. The circular saw spun around in the air and returned to Shuma's hand. He chuckled and said, "Because you were very interesting to dance, so I won't kill you." Zango. I really shouldn't have put my hopes on you. I didn't expect 2 years to make me so unbearable. Crow glanced at the battle situation, took off his stained glasses with no joy or sorrow, and shook his body slightly. Forget it. It doesn't matter. If all of you are killed here, the planet won't be too abortive or too exaggerated. There will always be a way to make up for it later. The Black Cat pirates who were cut down by Kabaji, regained some consciousness but still pretended to be dead, finally stood up staggeringly, looking at Crow's actions at this time with a horrified expression. Could it be that posture? Is he going to use that trick? The opponent isn't just a few people. It's not wrong. He wants to use that move. Spoon. It's Spoon. Hey, this is terrible. Even we will be affected. Even we will be killed indiscriminately. Stop, Captain Crow. Don't use this trick. We will listen to you. Please, Captain Crow. The pirate below shouted hoarsely, and his feet couldn't help but retreat. Crow will hang his body and keep shaking. Before he uses the spoon, he needs to let go of all his states. The wind blew over, and the airflow violently began to spread around. Crow disappeared in place. No. The pirate of the Black Cat Black Thieves group knelt helplessly on the ground, covering his head. We will all be killed. The group of pirates struggled feebly for a moment, then looked at each other in surprise. Why? Captain Crow's indiscriminate attack has no effect. Yeah, not just us, even the rock wall and the ground have no traces of Cat's claws. It's strange. Like a voice from the void, one of the pirates suddenly appeared in the air strangely, as if caught by something unknown. 5 deep scars suddenly appeared on his body. The cat's claw scar was thrown on the ground after being seriously injured. The empty slope was connected to the rocky beach. Although the pirates could not see any battle with their naked eyes, they could hear the sound of fierce fighting in the wind. Buggy stomped on the ground, using shave to closely follow Crow's figure, and the offensive and defensive sides sometimes switched offenses. However, it was the first time he fought in the shaved state, and his movements were more rustic than Crow's, and his rhythm was often a beat slower than that of the opponent. In other words, his hit rate was too low. Crow uses the cat's claw to attack, and Buggy uses the ability of passive splitting or the power of the finger gun to block it. When Buggy attacks, Crow will also rotate his palm to let the sharp knife on the cat's claw glove block the attack. However, Buggy takes the initiative to attack most of the time. His own fruit ability will not be afraid of the slash brought by the cat's claw. When attacking, he does not have to worry about getting injured, but there are also obvious disadvantages. The divided body will be affected by states other than shaved, such as air resistance and inertia, which will make him feel a little stiff. And although Crow didn't know what he was attacking, he had already used the cat's claw in his hand to the extent that he could stab, slash, defend and unload. Once he felt danger, he would immediately switch to defense, but even so, was still firmly suppressed in the confrontation with Buggy. Buggy is observing Crow's spoon. This move is not the same as shaving. Although the speed is very fast, it can only reach the introductory stage of shaving. Similarly, it also has the unattainable advantage of shaving. Crow, who uses this kind of footwork, can constantly change the direction in the process of advancing. In some cases, he can use the spoon to randomly destroy an hour or even a day. But shaved is completely unable to achieve this level. Every time you sprint, you need to step on the ground more than 10 times to accumulate explosive power, but it seems to consume less energy than spoon. He did not try his best to end the battle, but confronted Crow on the ground, also to hone his skills and experience in high-speed combat, and if he could steal the essence of spoon in this battle, he might be able to develop shaved in a flexible and changeable direction. Look! A member of the Black Cat Pirates yelled, I seem to have seen Captain Buggy appear just now. It's him. He's fighting Captain Crow. Hey, you kid actually called the enemy Captain. Don't say that, big man. If it wasn't for Captain Buggy, maybe we would have been killed here. Yes, Captain Buggy is our savior. In this case, let's cheer for Captain Buggy. The pirates of the Black Cat Pirates chattered about, and suddenly seemed to have made up their minds, shouting unanimously, Captain Buggy, beat this guy. Shu Ma, who was standing aside, touched his head. These upright ingredients are so strange. Why are you cheering for Buggy? Forget it. He followed blindly and raised his right hand, shouting excitedly, "Come on, Bucky." Kabaji glanced at the cheering pirates and touched the scabbard. These guys recovered their strength so quickly. It seems that my strength is lacking. Suddenly all the pirates felt cold on their backs. Usopp, who was standing on the ramp, turned his head around quickly. His dynamic vision was able to capture the movement trajectories of both sides of the battle. Compared with the pirates who didn't know what happened, he could see more clearly. To what is happening in front of you? The bastard with glasses is on par with Uncle Bucky. He murmured in a low voice, suddenly poked his waist, and laughed smugly. "K-ya. Did you see that the one who is fighting and the guys under there are very different? They are my friends, haha. They went to the Goldfish Poop Island with me for an adventure, and they should be counted among my 80 million subordinates." As he said that, the bloodstains on his arm that were drawn by Kella caused severe pain due to too much movement, and he collapsed on the ground weakly clutching his arm. "Well, I'm going to die. I got a bloodstain disease that can't be seen. I'm sick, I'm going to die soon. Proud Usopp is going to die in battle." K-ya supported Usopp's arm. "Stop making trouble, you just suffered some skin trauma, you won't die, Usopp." She frowned and thought for a while, then spread her palm. A strange green bubble popped out of her palm, and then squeezed the bubble into Usopp's arm. Usopp gritted his teeth and took a breath, only to feel that the pain in his arm was slowly disappearing, turning into a numb feeling. This magical power. He couldn't help but think of what happened more than an hour ago. Captain Usopp. Captain Usopp. Usopp, who was covered in bruises, opened his eyes wearily. His blurred vision was full of striped halos, and after a while, he could see clearly the familiar faces in front of him. Onion Head, Green Pepper Head, Dot and Carrot Head, why are you here? Kia, you. Captain Usopp, we didn't see you in the old place. We thought you were looking for Miss Kia, and then we went to the Hilltop Villa to find you, and then we met Miss Kia. Onion quickly shook his head, and said anxiously, "Captain Usopp, now is not the time to talk about this. We will send you to the village clinic immediately." Saying that, several people started to lift Usopp up. "Don't." Usopp pressed down on the three of them as hard as he could, and looked at Kaya who was covering his mouth and caressing his teary eyes. "Kaya, listen to me. Crataball is also the pirate crow, he hurt me to death. In this way. He is a very dangerous pirate, and his purpose is to steal your property. Stop talking, Usopp, we'll send you to the infirmary right away." Kia wiped away her tears, wanting to help Usopp. "Kaya." Usopp roared, coughed up a mouthful of blood suddenly, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said weakly, "Listen to me. There is a group of very powerful pirates on the East Coast. Captain Bucky used to be old with me. Dad is a crew member of the same captain. We can ask them for help, as long as I plead, he will definitely help me. But they may be sailing soon. If you don't hurry up, the village will be bloody. Do you understand?" Usopp looked at the people in front of him firmly. "Leave me alone. Don't worry about me to sacrifice the whole village by one person." Afterwards, he passed out due to the severity of his injuries, and when he woke up again, the pain in his body was inexplicably milder. The feeling of wandering between life and death is like a dream. Usopp patted his head like a world away. I don't know. After drinking the doctor's special medicine yesterday, I feel that my body is much better, and I seem to be able to control this." Small bubbles appeared in the palm of Kia. "Power." Usopp was stunned, and then exaggerated joy appeared on his face. "Kia, you seem to have become amazing. Haha. How could my Usopp's friend be an ordinary person? You must be favored by God." "God's favor." "That's right, God's." Usopp raised his head proudly. "I went to a strange sea area when I was 6 years old. The people there are different from ours. They have a kind of magical power. Bubbles are created that are the size of hills, and then these bubbles are used to create houses on the sea that can be lived in." "Really?" Usopp patted his chest confidently. "Of course, I'm Captain Usopp." Kaya forced a smile on her face, but it was still difficult to hide the sadness on her face. Looking at the slope and rocky beach where the wind was raging, she prayed silently in her heart, "Uncle Red Nose, you must win." The fierce fighting on the scene became more and more intense. Crow, who used the spoon to keep walking between the mountain walls, finally felt that he could no longer control the scene, and the veins on his forehead burst out. "You damn pirate. Why can you keep up with my speed?" The cat's claws in his hands wrapped around in an instant, cutting 3 strips of flesh across Bucky's chest. Bucky's body froze, his speed slowed down a beat, and at the same time the isolated body was reassembled together. "Why are you unscathed? Chloe, who felt the cat's paw hit the opponent's body, collapsed. "What kind of monster are you?" Bucky didn't reply. He followed Crow with a shave on his footsteps, and occasionally fired finger guns to force the opponent to change his offensive and trajectory, while paying attention to the opponent's footsteps and state. "His steps are messed up." Bucky caught the flash of opportunity in an instant, and his right foot curled slightly. In the next second, it suddenly lifted up, and a pale white slashing airflow about 1 meter wide swooped away, sealing it on the rock 10 meters in front of Crow's sprinting track. Boom. The rock wall collapsed, the rocks fell, and the dust was flying finely. Crow, who has always had a changeable trajectory and integrated offense and defense, was finally caught by Bucky after a wrong beat and interrupted the spoon. He stepped on the rock wall and hurriedly jumped onto the ground 7 or 8 meters away. At this time, Crow's face was scraped with a few shallow marks by the fine flying stone chips, his hair was blown tousled on his neat big back, and a few drops of blood stained his spotless suit. The image in the grip is completely opposite, looking embarrassed. He looked at Bucky with blurred eyes, and his gloomy face seemed to drip water. "What the hell are you?" Bucky looked at the other party slyly, and said with a false sense of truth, "As a colleague, you should have heard the legend of immortality. So it's like this." Crow narrowed his eyes slightly to make his vision clearer. "I always thought that devil fruits were legendary things, and it seems that they do exist. You must have eaten such things." As expected of the experienced Captain Crow, "I still can't lie to you. I have already abandoned my identity as Captain Crow." Crow was neither happy nor sad, and glanced at Kia in the distance from the corner of his eyes. "Then, the strange power in her also comes from this kind of thing, right?" Bucky was stunned for a moment, and his eyes fell on Kaya. The devil fruit that the cat stole was eaten by the young lady. Crow habitually pushed the non-existent glasses with his palm, and naturally lowered his head. "Although I haven't been active for more than 2 years, my body can still withstand a higher intensity, spoon. I want." Crow's body shook less and less, and his voice became a weak murmur, "Send all of you into." Whoosh. The body disappeared again. Bucky looked solemn, stepped on the ground, and used shave to keep up with the opponent's footsteps. "The speed is much faster. Almost catching up with my current limit speed." Bucky just paused for a moment, and Crow's figure was already out of his strike range. There were 5 neat deep marks on the rock, followed by a crew member of the Black Cat Pirates. His body was blown into the air by cat claws with impact, and 5 blood marks appeared on his clothes. Crashed to the ground. "Do not want. Captain Crow, spare our lives." More and more pirates began to scream in panic one after another. Clang. Kabaji drew his sword to resist in front of him. The sudden power of the cat's claws knocked him back 2 steps, and his footsteps left a clear trace on the mud. The 5 cat claws, nearly 1 meter long, had a wider and more terrifying attack range than Buggy's attack just now. Shuma stepped on the moon steps in the air, and the vision in the air meant that he could control the enemy's movements more effectively. He held the raptor boomerang in his hand, and his eyes quickly caught Crow's movements, ready to strike at any time. Bucky stopped following Crow and stood at the center of the transition between the beach and the slope, vaguely able to comprehend Crow's state. The cat's claw that pierced through the air split his upper body into 5 sections in an instant, and then disappeared again. Bucky's body returned to its original state, still thinking, suddenly seemed to have an epiphany. He suddenly concentrated all the energy in the body on the eyes with the return of life, and his eyes were bloodshot to capture every move and facial expression of Crow in the high-speed movement. In just the blink of an eye, the energy gathered by the return of life returns to all parts of the body. The fragile places like the eyes really can't bear too much strength, but it's enough. Bucky suddenly stretched out his hands, and grabbed at an open space 10 meters away. Crow, who seemed to be hiding in the wind, exposed his figure at this moment. His feet were entangled by Bucky's hands, and his movement trajectory was seen through. Game time. Over. Bucky's body was torn apart, and he crazily entangled with the startled-looking Crow, bringing the opponent's body high into the sky. Damn. Crow desperately scratched Bucky's split body with his cat's claws, feeling an unprecedented sense of crisis in his heart. However, after Bucky's body was split into several pieces, he wound up like a gangrene. His body brought Crow to a height of 30 meters, and he fell suddenly. Biao Lianhua. Sniper cannon. The bodies of the 2 of them plummeted down like meteors, and the sound of piercing through the air filled their ears and mouths. "No, let me go." Crow, who is full of strategies and has always been calm, erupted more exaggeratedly than ordinary people between life and death. Amidst the dilated pupils and the powerless and frightened roar, his body smashed into the rock like a shell. Boom. There was a violent crash on the rocky ground dozens of meters away, and the manic dust almost covered half of the rocky beach. Everyone covered their mouths and noses, watching the result of this thrilling battle intently. At the last moment when he was about to fall, Buggy sent all the downward thrust of his body into Crow's body, and at the same time pulled out with the downward reaction force and landed on the ground. Looking at the dust rolled up all over the ground, he pulled out the dagger he was accustomed to carrying close to his body and walked towards Crow's position. The dust finally dissipated, and Crow's body was almost twisted and sank into the ground. There were 7 or 8 obvious sharp knife wounds on his left chest close to his heart, which meant that he would never survive without a miracle. When making up the knife, sure enough, the dagger was easy to use. Buggy retracted the dagger, and greeted several pirates of the Black Cat Pirates. "I leave the battlefield to you to clean up." Several Black Cat Pirates looked at the scene in front of them tremblingly, glanced at each other, and pushed a few unlucky guys over, and they carried Crow's body and the Catman, who was also repaired. Brother ran back to the crowd in a panic, and then climbed onto the Black Cat pirate ship with the dazed Zhang Gao in his arms as if fleeing for his life, and sailed away quickly. The 100 crew, who offered a reward of 16 million, has been defeated. Usopp's tightly clenched fist finally loosened, and his brain suddenly felt extremely dizzy, and he was almost killed by Clue last night. The serious injury of death and the exhaustion from running all the way this morning broke out together, and he collapsed on the ground unconscious. Usopp. Kaya's body was also on the verge of falling, and she nervously touched Usopp's breath with her hand, and finally felt relieved. Her physical condition was already very weak, and after crawling and walking in the morning, she could no longer exert much strength. After sitting on the ground and taking a few breaths, she braced her body and walked towards Buggy and the others. Kia looked at Kabaji timidly. "Can I help you heal?" Kabaji leaned against the rock wall, exposing the scar on his chest, and said coldly, "No need, I don't want to accept gifts from others, and I will also do simple bandaging and treatment." "That's it." Kaya hesitated to speak. She originally wanted to try her best to provide some help to those who saved Crow, but the conversation hit a wall instead. The hesitation and fear in her heart deepened. The several months of recuperation made her temper with the weakness of the body. He became a lot weaker. "Kabaji, don't be shy." Buggy came over and patted him on the shoulder. "This is not a gift, it's a reward." His sly eyes flashed across. "Miss, let us see how you heal your injuries." "Don't call me Missy. I am very grateful to you for repelling the pirates and allowing me to see K. Luo's true face. I just hope to do something within my power," Kaya said with a sincere gaze. "Swordsman. Sir, can I help you heal?" Although he got Buggy's permission, Kabaji still asked Kabaji's opinion very politely. "You can do whatever you want," Kabaji said without too much enthusiasm. "Treatment. How to treat? Could it be possible to treat it empty-handed?" "Yes." Kia nodded reservedly, and spread her right hand upwards. As Kabaji's face gradually became surprised, an increasingly large green bubble formed in the palm of her hand, and then slowly pressed the green bubble on the Kabaji's chest. The bubbles infiltrated into Kabaji's body step by step. A numb feeling came from his chest, which covered up the pain a lot, and a light green scar formed on the wound. How did you do it?" Kabaji's face changed drastically from the disdain at the beginning to the later, and he touched the wound in disbelief, feeling a tenacious vitality growing outward from the wound, from the inside out. "Repair wounds." "I don't know," Kaya said in a panic. "You ate a devil fruit. Same as me." Buggy said with twinkling eyes. "This is a fruit that will give you magical powers after eating it, but as a price, the eater will be rejected by the sea and become a landlubber." "Then my ability." Kia looked at her palm in a daze. "It's the ability to become a ship's doctor." Buggy smiled slyly. "Boat doctor?" Kaya looked at Buggy suspiciously. "Yeah. Do you think we helped you smash such a big conspiracy that might even endanger the entire village? Can it be offset by just a few thanks?" Kaya took 2 steps back in panic like a deer, and said with a pale face, "Red Nose. Uncle, what do you mean?" "Don't call me Red Nose, and don't call me Uncle." Buggy adjusted his mood, and said casually, "The ship doctor who can only tie bandages has retired, and I just need a doctor, and that's you." "But I don't want to be a pirate." Buggy rolled his eyes and suddenly asked a big question. "I ask you, do you have a dream?" "Dream?" Kia murmured in a low voice, thought for a while, and said softly, "I want to see the colorful world outside like an adventure story. I want everyone to be healthy and healthy. Suffering from the disease like my parents and me, I still want to become stronger. I think a lot, but I know I can't do it. Set up. Bucky sketched a sly smile vaguely, brewing some emotions. As you can see, we are pirates, but we are a group of pirates with dreams. Rather than pirates, we are more like restless people wandering in the world. We see a wider world in unknown adventures. World. To be a grass can only take root in one place for a lifetime, but to become a dandelion, you can fly yourself to a distant place. If you are with a group of interesting dandelions, you can cuddle up even in the wind and waves. Sometimes restless people like us are injured or even dying because of our beliefs, but you can fully play your due value and save a group of lives who love dreams. Bucky paused, releasing passionate emotions like a sales lecturer. Do you want to grow and understand the value of your own existence? This ship will tell you that those who are independent, strong, confident, self-loving, and want to learn, it's a teacher. Listening to Bucky's words, Kia lowered her head, clasped her hands tightly to her chest, and showed hesitation. Do you know why you hesitate? Because your heart is moved, you are willing to see the vast ocean, but you are timid, afraid, hesitant, full of fear of the unknown, uneasy about your own weakness. If you stop here, you will never grow, and you will always go backwards, and you should make a correct judgment in your heart. I. Kia wanted to retort desperately, but couldn't utter a word, and faintly agreed with Bucky's words. Ahem. Bucky cleared his throat, and made the speech that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It's human nature to be worried. If you agree with my results in helping you repel these pirates, we can make a permanent gentleman's agreement. The next morning. In the villa on the hilltop of Xiluobu village, a sickly girl with pale yellow hair hummed some light tunes, and began to pack the clothes in the closet by herself. For some reason, a trace of longing for the outside world overwhelmed her previous uneasiness, and she began to look forward to it. Miss Meili, who learned the truth and everything from Kaya, looked at the unusual young lady in front of her, and said desolately, "Are you really going to be a pirate? Your illness is still not cured, and you in my heart will always be that cute and well-behaved child. I really never thought that you would actually want to be a pirate." The movements of Kaya's hands slowed down, and she was a little confused about the changes in her emotions. How could I? I looked up at the book on the desk, Ivan's adventure story, and slowly muttered to myself. Maybe, I'm actually a restless person. Meili, do you still remember what I looked like when I was a child? Kaya tidied up the clothes in her hands. At that time, I was playing in the mud like a boy. I was still laughing when the mud splashed on my clothes and face. I didn't know what it meant to be dirty. At that time, I could climb over walls and climb trees. I still remember that when I was about 6 years old, I fell from a big tree by the window. You immediately sent me crying to the village clinic. When I recovered from my injury, my father asked me to talk to me in the study. I've lost my heart all night, since that time. I have never done these dangerous things again, just like a quiet lady, hiding myself in the house every day. Even if I yearn for the outside world, I dare not open the door window. Miss Meili was a little moved. Although K. Rathbar has a purpose, but during those times, I felt that a light window was opened in my heart. Later, the stories Usopp told were like a beautiful world. I found that the window in my heart opened wider and wider, although I knew that the stories he told were all false, but that force was like a seed, taking root and sprouting on the edge of the windowsill, pulling the window sash open. Miss, I thought I was the person who knew you best, but unexpectedly. Meili almost cried out. I realized that I don't know what you want at all. Don't be like this, Meili. Apart from my father and mother, I actually love you the most. Thank you for what you have done for us all these years. Kaya turned around and bowed deeply to Meili. So, please also treat me as an independent adult. I know. Meili covered her face with tears. I will definitely support you, miss. Thank you, Mary, for understanding me. Kaya tidied up the package. Usopp, what's wrong with him? He's still resting in the room, and he looks like he's sleeping soundly. Meili's emotions hadn't calmed down yet, and she choked up and said, Do you want to see him? No, don't bother him. He is very tired. He must be having a very sweet pirate dream now. Kaya pulled her hair from the sideburns, looked up at the singing birds and flowers outside the window, and listened to the beautiful scenery. He probably won't support me. I don't want to cry with him like a little girl, or the resolution I just made will be lost. Will collapse. Rocky Beach on the east coast, aboard the Bickadup. Bucky stood alone on the deck, looking at the battle marks on the rocky beach and slopes. The cat's claws on the rock walls and the fragmented ground all proved the fierceness of the battle. During the battle yesterday, he had been observing the movements and demeanor of Crow using the spoon, twice before and after. Although both shaved and spoon have great requirements for foot strength, shave is explosive, while spoon pays attention to changing trajectories. During the battle, Crow's body was in a relaxed state. The initial shaking preludes seemed to be prepared to let the body enter this state. During the battle, his steps were very light, and all the strength he used was on the cat, on the claws. When he launched the spoon for the first time, Crow's face looked unconscious, as if he was launching an offensive unconsciously, but the second time he was closer to a subconscious state, and all the accumulated combat experience was instinctively erupted. In the comparison of these two spoons of different intensities, Buggy probably realized something. The rhythm is different. The rhythm of Crow's feet on the ground is very regular. Even if the speed is accelerated, the rhythm is not chaotic. That's what I said, but how to combine fast stepping and rhythm to reach a balance point and form a brand new physical skill is not as simple as it sounds. Buggy rubbed his forehead. He still needs to eat the meal one bite at a time. Let's study it in practice later. Carrying the package on her back, Kia came out from the path alone. She stopped to take a breath, wiped the sweat from her forehead, and continued to walk firmly towards the port. Seeing Kia walking from a distance to the shore step by step, Buggy was also a little surprised. Her complexion seemed to be very bad that night, and she was so sick that she seemed to be dying, but from yesterday to today, her physical condition there seems to be a significant improvement, and the rosiness on the face from sweating is not fake at all. What kind of devil fruit did she eat? Kaya quickly walked to the side of the boat, and Buggy took out one hand and pulled Kaya and her package onto the deck. Welcome, Chaosin. Amazing. Seeing Buggy's separated hand again, Kia was no longer so afraid, but still praised in surprise, and then bowed vigorously to everyone. My name is Kia. Please give me your advice in the future. Shu Ma rubbed his chin and murmured, Koya ingredients really look like the big clan. Shut up. Repair the horse. Buggy's right eye twitched, and the image of the cannibal patriarch was basically comparable to that of Granny K. Kella, who turned into a mermaid in the capital of Seven Waters. I'm Kabaji, the swordsman. You'd better be conscious when you get on the boat. This is not a pirate game. Kabaji said calmly, this is a man who has tried his best to survive on this sea. Senior's advice to you. Buggy slapped Kabaji on the head, don't take what I have to say. Kabaji quickly lowered his head. Sorry, Captain Buggy. Okay, there is a separate lounge in the cabin, you can choose one. Buggy said slowly, but before that, let me say that both you and I are the obligers of the agreement. If you don't meet my expectations, I will send you off the ship, and if you are not satisfied, you can get off the ship at any time before you reach that place. This is a gentleman's agreement. I will work hard, Uncle Buggy, but... Kia was a little timid, but she still said, please don't let me down on this boat. Buggy smiled slyly. Of course. Kaya. A low breathing voice came from the shore, abruptly interrupting Buggy's words, and looking sideways, Usopp was standing on the slope. Then, he staggered and ran over. Kaya. Usopp looked at the captain's Kaya, and turned to Buggy questioningly. Uncle Buggy, why did you take her out to sea? She is not suitable to be a pirate at all, she is just a lost parent's poor girl. After speaking, Usopp realized that he had said something he shouldn't have said, and couldn't help swallowing. Facing Usopp's irrational words, Buggy shook his head. Kaya-san, I only let you on the boat because I approve of you. You should understand this. If you want to grow, try to look forward to the past. Say no, tell yourself, you are no longer a girl who stands on tiptoe to look at the outside world. Kaya took a deep breath. Uncle Buggy, I understand. Kaya leaned on the railing, her face turned firmly towards Usopp. Usopp, thank you for the joy and stories you brought me. I have always been grateful to you, but I also want to make myself able to do more things. I don't want to be like the snail in the story you told. I have spent my whole life climbing a high mountain, only to find that it is just a sand dune piled up by a few children. You should be able to understand my desire to become more reliable. Kia, no, if you go to sea, you will be killed. You will be killed by those indiscriminate and cruel pirates on the sea. I don't want my friend to lose his life in vain like this. Usopp said anxiously, Uncle Buggy, please, let her get off the boat. Usopp. Buggy leaned against the railing, looked up at the sky. Don't just live in your own world. Everyone and everything in this world are independent and equal. When your world, if you are not strong enough to influence others, don't take yourself seriously. It's not your fault that you are weak, but if you sprint recklessly and don't know how to restrain yourself, you will be very stupid. Uncle Buggy. Kia, who was standing aside and listening, showed a look of unbearable expression. Don't say such hurtful things. I'm just teaching him a truth. The road to growth will not be smooth. A smile was drawn at the corner of Bucky's mouth, and then he jumped off the Bicketup and stood in front of Usopp. I forgot to tell you, the red-haired Shanks and I used to be crew members on the same ship, but I was not his subordinate. If I have to say, I am almost his enemy. Because of some relationship, when I think of his face, I feel uncomfortable. You should understand what I mean. You. Dot and Shanks are deadly enemies, then my father. Usopp swallowed, and instinctively came up with a thought. It's over, I'm going to be killed. He quickly took out his slingshot, looked at Bucky warily, and shouted, Kia, he is the notorious pirate Bucky, he is not a good person, don't be fooled by him. Ignore the contribution I made to this village openly, and just judge a person's good and evil based on personal preferences and interests. Your thinking is really immature, young man. After the words fell, Bucky came over in an instant, and punched Usopp hard in the face, knocking him out like a cannonball. His body flew dozens of meters in the air, like a ragbag fell heavily on the ground. Usopp's old injury broke out, and blood was coughed out of the corner of his mouth. He supported his body and barely stood up, roaring loudly. I know you are strong, but I will never lose to you, just like I did before. This is the location said, whether it is the village or Kia, I will not give it up to you. It's very difficult to change a person's inherent thinking. Bucky stood still. Well, I can give you a chance to challenge. Usopp tightly held the slingshot in his hand, his puffy cheeks showed rare seriousness and caution. Shuma, come down. Bucky called out, and Shuma jumped slightly, landing on the rocky beach. Usopp, this is the sniper on my ship, if you have the courage, let's fight. Bucky's voice suddenly became gloomy, sniper of life and death. Usopp's pupils shrank suddenly, and cold sweat dripped down his face. Do you want me to fight with the long-nosed inconvenience? Shuma asked suspiciously. No, it's a duel. Bucky's tone was somewhat formal. I accept. Usopp looked at the pirate ship and Bucky and others. I know that if you have so many powerful monsters together, I definitely have no chance of victory, but if it's just one person. He quickly put the fiery red ammunition in the bow pocket, and quickly opened the bow pocket. Try my new move. The seemingly magnificent fiery red ammunition turned into a red light under the elastic force of the slingshot, and shot it precisely at Shuma. He will definitely avoid it. The super pepper star will explode into powder after flying for a certain distance. As long as you avoid it, your vision and sense of smell will definitely be seriously disturbed. I have a chance. A look of joy appeared on Usopp's face, and in an instant, his expression froze. Seeing that Shuma's body seemed to be shaking and dodging, he suddenly stopped in place, opened his mouth, and swallowed the pepper without hesitation, and the raptor boomerang in his hand suddenly turned into a disc and flew out. Out. Bucky turned away from watching the fight because it was over. Blind self-confidence and insufficient preparation can only lead to failure. A light-colored blood spattered on Usopp's chest, his eyes turned white, and he fell to the ground. Even the last bit of willpower could not support him to speak. Set sail. With his back to the fallen Usopp, Bucky jumped onto the boat, and the melodious voice slowly spread. If you want to continue to challenge, try to make yourself stronger. This is my last advice. No, he will die. Kya panicked. Shuma also landed on the deck. He said with a smile. No, Bucky specially asked me to do it lightly. I dare to use my cooking skills to guarantee that the long-nosed ingredients will be fine, and look, come here gone. Meili, who was accompanying her all the way, stood beside Usopp, checked quickly, and nodded towards this side, indicating that there was no problem, then waved her hand at the Bicketup with tears in her eyes, and hurriedly lifted the Usopp. Thorpe leaves. You should understand what I mean, Kia. Bucky leaned on the railing. I know. Uncle Bucky is trying to set a goal that can motivate him. Usopp is just a little stubborn, a little paranoid, and a little impulsive. Kia looked at the dwindling Sarab village, but I think he will understand your painstaking efforts, Uncle Bucky, and when he becomes a brave sea warrior in the future, he will definitely be grateful to you. I don't need this kind of gratitude for everything I have done. Bucky looked up at the magnificent ocean, raised his head, and said silently, it's just a little fun of mine. Puff puff, a seabird with a distinctive hat and a newspaper wrapped around its neck landed on the railing of the boat beside Bucky. It's Newsbird. Bucky consciously took out 50 Baileys from his pocket, threw it into Newsbird's package, and took out a newspaper from it. Then, the Newsbird flapped its wings and flew into the sky. I saw this bird when I was on the island. It seems that its package will never be empty again. It's very interesting. Huma squinted one eye, picked up the boomerang and aimed it at the Newsbird. Bucky hurriedly pressed his hand, stopped and said, Stop messing around, Shuma. If you heard it, we won't have any sources of news in the future. After Huma touched his head in confusion and stopped, Bucky quickly flipped through the newspaper, and 4 new leaflets were caught in it and fell out of the interlayer. With quick eyes and quick hands, Kabaji caught the bounty list that was almost blown away by the sea wind, and glanced at it. It was the bounty list of the Bucky pirates. He flipped through them one by one, muttering in his mouth, "That fellow Mochi." In the East China Sea, on a small boat heading west from Luobu village in the west. Ah. Mochi rubbed his reddened nose and murmured, "I have a cold." "No, I've never caught a cold before." "Hey, strange guy, move slowly." Mikkel frowned, holding 2 large packages on the bow. "It will be very troublesome to overturn the boat on the sea." After the two ransacked the treasure in the empty Black Cat pirate ship, Mochi said that he would not take any money, but in exchange, Mikkel would take him to Kokoja village, so the two sat together at the moment. Boat. Mochi patted Li Kei's head hard with his right hand. "Did you hear that? Slow down and paddle well for me." Ouch. Li Chi lowered his head in confusion. The lion's front paws grasped the oars and paddled backwards, and the other lion's front paws lazily picked its nostrils. "It's really 2 guys of unknown origin," Mikkel said with his mouth curled up. Seeing that he had gained a lot this time, he didn't care about it seriously. Mochi wanted to refute, but when he thought of Captain Bucky's order, he swallowed the words in his mouth, and when Mikkel turned his head, he sneakily made a face at her back. Mikkel seemed to have noticed it, and turned his head suspiciously. Hum hum hum. Mochi hurriedly hummed the tune of March of Beast Taming, as if nothing had happened, and turned his head away. Mikkel said, "A man with chest hair and hair." Mochi suddenly flustered a little self-consciously. "Hey, I don't have any worries and good intentions." "No." Mikkel twitched his ears and sniffed his nose. "The humidity here is a bit high, the wind speed is very fast at 9 o'clock, and the cumulonimbus clouds in the south are already gathering momentum, and there will be a heavy rain soon. All right. Let's speed up. If we don't leave here quickly, we will probably be swept back by the big waves. If we are unlucky, we will be delayed for half a day and deviate from the route." Mochi was a little shocked. "You." Mikkel raised his head proudly. "This is a cat's housekeeping skills." Mochi continued. "You can still pretend to be a ghost. Stop rambling. Paddle quickly." Mikkel bared his teeth and claws. "It's such an arrogant cat." Mochi muttered twice, not daring to be negligent. Now he is burdened with the secret mission of Captain Bucky's secret confession, even Kabaji's. While paddling, he shook his head and shook his head. "Let me, Lord Mochi, name this battle, the path of the lonely beast trainer who endures humiliation." Aboard the Bakudop at the other end, Kabaji held the 4 bounty sheets in his hand, looked at them over and over for a long time, and almost broke the bounty sheets. Bucky flipped through the newspapers in his hand for some notable news, such as, Villa rioted again, the old king of Lenore abdicated and the new king ascended the throne, and other news, and after roughly reading, he put it away. Go down. Looking up at Kabaji. "Haven't seen enough." Kabaji's face froze, and he reluctantly said, "No, I've already seen it." Said, and handed it to Bucky. Bucky took the reward list and looked down. Both the avatar and the text below on the reward list are relatively rough, probably because the amount is too small. Open black lens bracket Bucky the Clown close black lens bracket. A reward of 19.5 million Baileys is offered, regardless of life or death. In addition to his own bounty list being relatively formal, Kabaji's 3 million Bailey bounty list is still exquisite and has no rough edges, such as Shuma's 6 million Bailey bounty list. The head is completely painted, and Mochi, even the after the 3, has been smeared on the 0 million Bailey reward list. Etc. Why is this 0 smeared? Why is this 0 so similar to 1? Bucky carefully looked at the reward list again, and looked back suspiciously at Kabaji, who blushed slightly and turned his head away, turning a blind eye to the sky. This idiot. Bucky helped his forehead helplessly, and continued to focus on the reward list. Kabaji and Mochi only made some threats to Colonel Mouse, and the bounty increased by 3 million. In the East China Sea, where the average bounty is 3 million, it is already considered considerable. The reason why Shu Ma's reward was higher was that he beat Colonel Mouse. As for his own reward of 19.5 million Baileys, it was quite meaningful. There have been 2 big figures in the East China Sea that have caused turmoil in the whole world. In order to create the most peaceful sea area on the surface, the government has paid more attention to it than other sea areas. Therefore, this sea has been strictly controlled by the Navy all year round. Once a vicious pirate is found, it is often strangled among the seedlings. If Aaron is regarded as the apex of the bounty in the East China Sea, The 20 million mark is a very obvious warning signal, which means that if he makes trouble and raises the bounty, he will be treated extremely seriously. Of course, the reward of 20 million Baileys does not represent Aaron's true strength. If Aaron is put on the great route, as far as Buggy judges, the bounty can be doubled at least. After all, he is also the veteran of the Sun Pirates one. The reward list came so quickly this time. Presumably the mouse must hate himself to death. There is no way to do it. Without this villain, how can he hold an excellent navigator? Buggy returned the bounty list to Kabaji, and looked forward at the rough sea. In his vision, Kaya, who was also standing on the deck and wearing a light yellow coat, was blowing the sea breeze quietly, with a pale face. The last trace of confusion and firmness coexist. Kei Yusong, I remember that night, you looked sickly, but now you look much better. Well, it should be the effect of the devil fruit you mentioned, Uncle Bucky, although I don't know why I would eat this magical thing. The slightly irritable sea breeze blows Keiya's sideburn hair. She squints her eyes. When I'm basking in the sun, I feel that my body will overflow with magical power. What happened to the bubble? Just think about it in your heart, and you can secrete it from your hands. Kia spread out her palms, and green bubbles appeared in her palms. This should be a tree sap bubble. She spread out her other hand, and yellow-brown bubbles appeared in the palm of her hand. This is a resin bubble. But condensing into bubbles will consume the strange power in the body, which can only be replenished by exposure to the sun. It seems to be a devil fruit related to plants. The reason why the body can recover so quickly is the photosynthesis of plants. This is really a vegetable, in the true sense. Vegetable. Keiya gently tapped her cheek with her index finger, without any expression of disgust, maintaining a peaceful and gentle smile. That's not bad. One day later in the evening, at the port of Kokoyashi village in the Aaron Empire. The boat floated to anchor, and Mikkel jumped ashore with a package full of treasures in each hand. I'm a cat that keeps my word. I've already completed the deal, so you can't pester me anymore. Mochi pretended to be disdainful. Master Mochi wouldn't do such a boring thing, Li Ji, don't you think so? Ah? Li Chi glanced at Mochi, and was lost in thought again. HMPH. Mikkel looked around, put the cloak back on his body, and left quickly. It's running really fast. Mochi led Li Kei to go ashore quickly, but it doesn't matter, as long as we use our combo skills, we can definitely catch up with this little thief. Li Kei put his limbs on the ground in comprehension. His eyes suddenly revealed a fierce look, and his mouth kept humming, as if it was the sound of a train whistle. Ah. Woo. 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 Mochi hugged Li Kei's body tightly with his four limbs facing away from him, facing Li Kei's ass with his head, trying to spit out a few words from his mouth. Combining. Techniques. Just. Calling. Doing. Only halfway through his words, his mouth seemed to be blown by a bellows, and the sea breeze in his stomach burst out from his throat in an instant. Call. The huge airflow made Lakey slide forward like a powerful motorcycle. The house was in the long shadow of the setting sun. A murloc with braided hair squinted his eyes, looked at Mochi and Li Ji who were rushing forward, and thought to himself, it's a guy who has never seen it before. Report to Brother Blackbelt. Mikkel was walking ahead, turned into a corner of an alley, and passed by Mochi and Li Ji who couldn't hold back their momentum at all. He suddenly felt a gust of wind and turbulence. When the wind calmed down, he was a little inexplicable. Didi leaned out and looked around, but didn't see anything. Instead, he ate a stomach full of dust, his eyes flickered twice in doubt, and continued to move forward. Mochi and Lakey fought all the way, turning and turning uncontrollably. Finally, Mochi exhaled all the sea breeze stored in his belly, hugged Li Kei into a ball, rolled several times, and fell into a bush. One man and one beast gasped for breath and collapsed to the ground feebly. What stinks so much? Mochi pinched his nose and looked at Li Kei horribly. Li Kei, is it your foot stink? Likey covered his heels that were hot from rubbing against the ground, and pointed his front paw at Mochi's mouth contemptuously. Mochi was stunned, put his hands around his mouth, let out a breath, and immediately lay on the ground with his eyes turned white. It was really an extremely fishy sea breeze smell. The faint movement in the grass made Mikkel, who was walking quickly along the shortcut, look suspiciously, and then walked towards the pile of grass. Little cat, not far away, in a small house with a white and clean appearance, a beautiful woman with lavender hair was wearing an apron, leaning against the door with her arms folded, squinting her eyes and showing a happy expression. You are back. Nuokagao. Mikkel jumped forward with joy. His furry cheeks kept rubbing against Nuochigao's face, and his ears kept trembling. Nuokagao held the spoon in one hand, so he stroked Mikkel's head with one hand. Okay, let's eat first. I want to eat the salmon made by Nuo Kagao. Mikkel continued to rub his fluffy head. There is no such thing, little greedy cat, but there is orange rice. Then eat orange rice. Mikkel picked up the 2 packages on the ground, and walked into the house with Nuo Kagao. Mochi and Leaky, who were watching secretly, glanced at each other, then sneaked closer to the house, went around the window in the side corner and raised their ears, and could vaguely hear the conversation between the 2 people in the house. No Kagao. Mikkel sat on the table eating orange rice and said vaguely, "Where's Nami?" Nuo Kagao, who was leaning on the table with his hands quietly watching Mikkel's meal, put his hands behind his head and tilted the chair skillfully. Nami is also like you, she went to find the treasure and hasn't come back yet. Well, but when she comes back, she will kick you out again. I don't care. I made great contributions this time and took a lot of treasures. She will definitely not be so bad-hearted, or she wouldn't have saved me back then. Really? Nuo Kagao withdrew her body, put her hands on the table and stuck her head, and looked at Mikkel quietly. I remember that more than a year ago, you stubbornly followed behind Nami and said wholeheartedly that you wanted to repay her life-saving grace. She was really annoyed by you, so she made that request. I thought you would retreat, but I didn't expect you to return. Fucked her. At that time, Nami originally wanted to find the treasure of Buggy the Immortal, but the big pirate disappeared suddenly, and on the way back without success, she saved your little cat. Good luck or bad luck? Blessing. Of course it's a blessing. Mikkel licked off the few rice grains left on the plate, and rubbed his stomach contentedly. Hey, I've saved a lot of money this year and put it in the orange treasure box, plus today's treasure. I can help Nami liberate this village immediately, and I will definitely complete the cat's repayment. You. Nuo Kagao smiled helplessly, brought the plate over, got up and walked to the sink. Recently, Nami's notebook has written a lot of sailing experience. You should read it quickly. After reading it, remember to put it back. Of course, Nami's sailing experience is really good. Her unique insights and analysis really surprised the cat. The encounter between Nami and I was indeed arranged by heaven. Squeak. The door of the room was pushed open, and the orange-haired girl stood at the door, looking at the scene in the room. Her face instantly turned from joy to coldness. Mikkel, as I said, please get out of here. I don't want to see you. I hate all races other than humans. Nuo Kagao put down the plate in his hand and advised, don't be like this, Nami. Don't talk too much. Nuo Kagao, you should understand me. Belmo was mercilessly killed by Eren. Whether it was a Murloc or a fur tribe, they are all evil races, and they will never be equal to humans. If you look at it from the ground up, in the final analysis, they are just raccoons of the same species. Nami's tone was very sharp, without the slightest room for maneuver. Tears overflowed from Mikkel's eyes, sobbing softly, without saying anything. Looking at Mikkel's expression, Nami showed a look of unbearable expression, and turned her head slightly. You go. I don't want to have anything to do with you. All right. Nuo Kagao interrupted the somewhat stiff and cold atmosphere. Nami, don't say such things again. Mikkel has done so many things this year and made such a big sacrifice for us. Even if you are kind, don't say such hurtful words. Nami lowered her head, a trace of frustration flashed across her face. Mikkel tried his best to stop his sobbing, wiped away his tears, and opened the 2 parcels on the ground one by one. Gold, silver and jewels glistened. She said cautiously, look, Nami, I have stolen more treasure this time than before. Immediately, I can save this village immediately. You. I'm sorry, Mikkel, I shouldn't have said such things. Nami showed guilt, her right hand tightly hugging the slightly hideous tattoo on her left arm. But, I really don't want you to get involved in our village. I don't want to implicate you. How could it be? Mikkel laughed through his tears. Your business is the cat's business. You saved me. Of course, I will repay you well. At least I won't leave until the agreement is fulfilled. You are really self-willed, because you are the cat's savior. Thank you. Mikkel, I actually like you very much. After Nami finished speaking, Mikkel rushed up instantly, threw Nami to the ground, rubbed her fluffy head against Nami. Me too. Nami smoothed her hair, and pushed Mikkel away a little bit ticklish. Okay, let's see how far away Bailey is. Several people piled up the treasures in front of them and counted them quickly. 300. 0.400. 0.600. 0.630. Combined with mine, there are more than 8 million Baileys here. Nami rubbed Mikkel's soft face fiercely. You are really too much awesome. I love you so much. Mikkel squinted his eyes very much. Me too. In this way, plus the previous collection, We are only 100 million berries away from the 200 million goal. Nuo Kagao looked at the scene in front of him and smiled knowingly. That's right, it's only 100 million Baileys away. As long as we go to sea again, we can liberate Kokoyasi village, Nami said with firm eyes. Mikkel's ears moved suddenly, and his eyes turned towards the door. What is that? Several people looked back, and a slightly bulging bag appeared inexplicably at the door that was not closed in time. Nami walked out and looked around. Is anyone there? Her answer was silence. This is. When she opened the bag, a look of excitement appeared on her face. Bailey. I hurriedly counted it, and it happened to be 100 million Baileys. Mikuer, Nuokagao, it's Bailey, my god, why are they in this place? Mikkel said happily. Could it be that you forgot to bring it in? Nuo Chigao's expression was the most normal among the three. Maybe Aegean and the others put it there. Nami was stunned. Aegean. Actually, everyone already knows that you joined the Aaron pirates to collect 200 million Baileys and redeem this village from Aaron. Nuo Kagao smiled slightly. Nami was startled when she heard the words, revealing a touch of memory. It turns out that everyone knows. They are really bad. In order to take care of my mood, they pretended to know nothing. Wait. It's not the time to say these words. Nami suddenly picked up the package full of gold, silver and jewelry, and ran outside quickly. After a while, she ran back in disgrace, with a dirty wine bottle wrapped in newspaper. This is the orange whiskey that I buried in the ground a long time ago, and I plan to take it out when the agreement is fulfilled. She took out 3 cups and filled them up one by one. However, even if you drink now, it has nothing to do with it. Let's drink to Mikkel's contribution. Let's drink to the soon-to-be liberated Kokoyasi village. Cheers. The three happily picked up the wine glasses and bumped into each other. The crystal wine splashed everywhere, and the cheers filled the whole room. This was Burmer's favorite wine at the time. Because he was reluctant to spend money on wine, he mixed orange juice with wine so that he could drink it for a long time, and the money he saved could be used to buy books and clothes for the children. Nami walked to the door and looked at the sky dotted with stars. Burmel, you will be watching there, watching everyone in this village live peacefully. In the grass, 2 guys lying on the ground looked at the stars with their legs crossed. Mochi took the phone bug back into his arms. Pirates don't steal money, but give money to others. It's really incomprehensible. Although I brought 400 million Baileys, I only spent 100 million. Never mind. Barry, what Captain Key said must be right. What do you think, Lakey? Wow. Li Chi narrowed his eyes dully, looking at the stars, and the corner of his mouth was drooling. The stars in the night sky are gradually disappearing, and the sun in the east is slowly rising into the sky. In the center of Aaron's Empire Square, a naval officer wearing a mouse hat sat on a chair and waved, and the sergeant spread out 4 reward lists on the table. Aaron, you Murlocs have always been the overlords of the sea. I would like to ask you to do me a favor. Send some people to kill these pirates at sea, GG. Haha. Hearing the words of flattery, the sawtooth sharkman Aaron laughed and picked up the bounty list in his hand, and glanced casually. Bucky the clown. I remember his bounty is only 10 million. Well, I didn't expect it to rise to 19.5 million now. It really makes people a little uncomfortable. That's right. These pirates are challenging your authority. Colonel Mouse took out a stack of Baileys from his pocket and put them on the table. Let's cooperate. These are the rewards after things are done. It's a good deal. For 200 million Baileys, you can buy Bucky's head with a reward of 19.5 million Baileys. Aaron didn't take the Baileys on the table. The colonel really knows how to joke, haha. The mouse looked a little cold, and looked at Aaron silently. Don't get me wrong, Colonel, we are friends, but I also need you to do me a little favor, and then I will go and kill a third-rate pirate like Bucky. Go ahead, as long as it's within the scope of my permission. The two talked for a while. A red-skinned Murloc hurried over. Boss Aaron, nah. Nami is on the way and will be here soon. Okay. Don't make a fuss, I heard. Zauba, escort the colonel away. Aaron looked back at the Murloc, and shouted towards the huge door. Mouse squinted his eyes and stood up. His face couldn't hide his joy. Then I'll take my leave first. Whoa. Octopus Zauba jumped up from the water and pointed to the octopus tank behind him. Okay, I will escort you back, but you look like a mouse no matter what, ha 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 ha. Aaron quickly said. Hey, Zauba, don't talk to our friends like that, the colonel is a regular customer. The mouse squeaked twice, and sat down on the octopus tank with a few of his men. Watching the mouse go away in the octopus tank, Aaron stood up. Okay, Chirp, let's go for a walk and hunt around the seabed. black belt, and I'll leave the rest to you. Eren, I'm back. Nami pushed open the painted red door, walked into Eren's Empire Square, looked around, and her eyes fell on the black belt swimming in the pool. Where is Eren? It's you, Nami. The black belt continued to swim quickly in the pool. Eren just went out, you should wait here a little bit. Nami concealed a trace of anxious joy in her heart, her face was cold. He will leave here. Where did he go? I heard that you were about to collect 100 million berries. Eren happily went hunting for food in the sea. Don't worry, he will come back after a while. Black Belt said calmly, with a sudden jumped onto the shore, splashing countless water splashes. Nami's calm expression became a little surprised at the moment when the water splashed. How do you know that I have collected 100 million berry? The black belt didn't say much, twisted his neck, picked up a towel and wiped his face. You were about to say goodbye to this place. How about it? Let's go to the room where you grew up and have a look. It's the result of nearly 8 years of hard work. Nami trembled slightly, and said a few words. No, there's no need, I'll just wait here for him to come back. Time passed quickly, and I waited for an hour in a blink of an eye. Nami tried her best to maintain a calm and indifferent expression, but as soon as she stepped into Eren's domain, she felt uncomfortable all over, as if she was in a rusty cage, and felt a terrible sense of suffocation all the time. The anticipation in my heart for liberating the village is also constantly heating up, and the burning thoughts are almost unbearable. Boom. The lingering sound of a gunshot came from a distance, and it was the location of the orangery. Nami's pupils dilated, a bad premonition emerged in her mind, and she hurried outside. Nami, wait a little longer. The black belt's strong hands grabbed Nami's wrist. Eren will be back soon. Let me go. Nami took out 3 wooden sticks from the side of her thigh in an instant with her other hand, combined them skillfully, and hit the black belt without hesitation. Snapped. The black belt slapped the stick to the ground effortlessly. You are really rude, you don't look like our partner at all. Let go of me. Let go of me. Nami repeated this sentence. The resentment in her eyes was about to burn out her reason, and she was still persuading herself not to let the painstaking efforts of the past 8 years be ruined. The black belt glanced sideways at the location of the gunshot, and slowly let go of Nami's hand. After seeing Nami rushing out impatiently, he murmured. This human has never really. If you really want to join us, Eren is right. Human beings can only be used. Nuo Kagao, Mikkel. You must be careful. Nami anxiously ran towards the orange orchard. Her feet were covered with mud, and she didn't even notice that one of her sandals had fallen off. She lowered her head and watched the running by herself. Along the way, she passed through a few Marines who were badly injured and carrying huge packages. She just paid attention to it in a little surprise, and continued to run. Drop, drop, drop. The sky became gloomy without warning. 1 or 2 drops of rain fell one after another. The rain gradually became heavier, and the raindrops falling all over the sky were thin and dense, and the lonely figure seemed small and thin in this rain. Snapped. The door of the house was pushed open, and Nami looked around in a panic, and her eyes fell on Nuo Kagao, who was lying unconscious on the bed. Her face was pale, with bandages wrapped around her body, her eyes closed, and she looked very painful. Mikkel's face was full of tears, and he looked up at Nami sadly. Tears kept falling like a floodgate, and said with a sob, Nami. I'm sorry, if I wasn't drunk last night and heard wake up after the gunshot, and this kind of thing will never happen. But if Nuo Kagao is not saved, she will die. I have no way to stop them. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mikkel sobbed remorsefully, but he didn't dare to speak too loudly. It's all my fault. Calm down. Nami felt her head was spinning. She breathed a sigh of relief, and put her hands on Mikkel's shoulders. What's going on? Why did Nuo Kagao become like this? It was the Navy. The Navy that had made a deal with Eren. It was they who injured Nuo Kagao and took away the treasures we had accumulated. Mikkel cried and said intermittently. Nami closed her eyes tightly, and the scene of bumping into the Navy just now appeared in her mind. Behind them was. In exchange for 100 million berry covered with blood and almost dead, in order to save the entire village from hell. No. No. Eren. Nami rushed out the door and disappeared into the vast rain. Nami. Mikkel looked worriedly at Nami's disappearing back, then turned his head and touched Nuo Chigao's hot forehead. It's burning so badly. Nuo Kagao, you must be safe. Nami ran to Eren's Empire Square with all her strength, looked at Eren who had come back, her eyes drooped, buried deep in the shadows. She suddenly raised her head, burning with anger. Eren, you bastard. What's the matter, our excellent surveyor? Aaron sat on the exclusive seat as if nothing had happened, looking up at the heavy rain with joy. This rain is really timely, and it makes me feel every part of my body. Everyone is jumping for joy. It was you who used means to get the Navy to come and steal my money. Nami walked step by step, reached out and grabbed Aaron's collar, and roared loudly, "Aren't you going to die and won't break the agreement on money?" "When did I break the agreement? Don't play dumb, you and the Navy." Before he finished speaking, Nami's mouth was tightly held by Aaron's huge hand, and his eyes were like a furious sea king, full of murderous intent and cruelty. "When did I break the agreement? Why don't I know? Why don't you tell me?" Ha ha ha. Amid Nami's tears, Aaron and all the Murlocs were laughing mercilessly and cheering wantonly, as if they had heard the funniest joke in the world. "It's really unlucky that the money was robbed, but there is no way around it. An agreement is an agreement. If it can't be reached, I can't return the village to you." Aaron slowly released the strength in his hand. "I will never break my promise when it comes to money. Whenever you put 200 million berry in front of me, I will return the village to you, haha." The ruthless ridicule kept smashing the line of defense in Nami's heart. She felt that she was almost unable to control herself, and only the urge to fight with the disgusting Murloc in front of her was left in her mind. "Isn't it 100 million berry? If you were robbed, just save it back." Aaron realized that Nami's emotions had reached the extreme, and said in a slightly threatening tone, "Don't tell me you want to run away. No, no. All the people in the village will be killed, and no one will survive." Nami took a breath, and the resentment that was about to explode was like a thick layer of ice, which was instantly frozen. She slapped Aaron's hand away vigorously, fleeing from this area like a timid and helpless cat. A square filled with the smell of Murlocs. The rain all over the sky is intertwined, like a thin, long and endless net, covering the entire Coco Yaxi village. On the long village path, the splashing muddy water bent the wild flowers on both sides, staining the buds that had just bloomed with a layer of filth, and the frogs along the way flapped their mouths and made restless sounds. "Jump out of the way. Burmel. Norchigo. Mikule. What should I do?" The single figure fell into the mud on the side of the road. Her cheeks, underwear, and feet were covered with mud. She struggled to sit up, staring blankly at the front, unable to see clearly what was going on next. "The way I want to go." A dream built with painstaking efforts over the past 8 years is like being smashed into pieces of glass by a punch, splashing scum all over her body. Pain and blood can't get her out of the helplessness and despair of reality. Pull back. There seemed to be a bloody mouth that was getting closer and closer in front of me, devouring all the visible light, and the warmth transformed by hope was also eroded by the ice. The tears gradually dried up, and the body began to become numb. A hand that was not wide, stretched out and stopped in front of her eyes, like the last holy dawn that the dead saw before dying, bright and warm. Nami raised her head unconsciously. "Who is? Is it an angel sent by God?" No, it was a man with white hair and a bulging belly like a pregnant woman who was 8 or 9 months old, and a lion with a purple mane stood beside him. "Are you Nami?" Nami glanced at this funny-looking man, lowered her head with a dull expression. "Forget it. I'm not very good at talking. Let's leave it to Captain Buggy." Mochi withdrew his hand, took out a phone bug from his pocket, and dialed the number. The phone bug's red nose was round and bright, and Bucky's voice came from the other end. "Mochi, it seems that you have done a good job, and I will praise you in front of Kabaji later." "Really? Captain Bucky, this one-eyed man must be going to die of anger." Mochi let out a smug laugh, and then held up the phone bug and placed it in front of Nami. Moses, hello, Nami." The phone worm made a sly voice, even imitating that casual yet serious look. Seeing that there was no answer, the phone bug continued to talk. "My name is Bucky. I heard that your 100 million berry was snatched by the Murloc Aaron. Haha, I'm so sorry. The news spread to my ears along the wind." Bucky. Nami's mind finally cleared up a lot, and she raised her head to look at the phone bug in front of her. "It's a pity. The Kokoyasi village could have been liberated immediately, but in the end, it was turned against me. The treasures of my relatives were taken away without a penny. It sounds really pitiful. Do you need me to mourn for you? Haha." Nami's chest heaved violently, as painful as if salt water had been sprinkled on the wound. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she yelled loudly at the phone bug. "You don't know anything. Why do you laugh at me? There are as many pirates as you do, who only destroy and kill. You don't know how to protect others and be afraid of disappointing expectations. The mood. I hate you pirates, I hate you." She didn't know why she had to say so much to a pirate she didn't know, but once the gap in her heart was opened, it was difficult to restrain her emotions. Don't jump to conclusions. If you can solve the problem by shouting and making noise, the world won't need any peacekeepers. The words from the phone bug became very slow, and then the voice sounded a bit sinister and ruthless. I can point out 3 paths for you to choose from here. Don't interrupt in a hurry, you might as well listen to it. Nami didn't answer. Non-committal. The first one is to rebel with the villagers of Kokocha village and overthrow Aaron's rule. Stop talking stupid. How can you beat that kind of monster? How can you let everyone die in vain? Buggy continued. Okay, the second way, Mochi, give her 10 million Baileys. Mochi was stunned for a moment, and stretched his hand into his swollen belly. There were layers of ripples around the belly, and he opened a strange opening, and he dug inside. 4 or 5 bulging bags were taken out of his mouth. He took it out of his stomach and threw it on the ground, and his stomach returned to its normal shape. How do you have so many Baileys? No, these are mine. Nami was dumbfounded, and then said in surprise. Her mood was raised a lot by the loss of the treasure. The second way, hand over these Baileys to Aaron and liberate your village. I heard that he has always kept the money agreement, so let me wait and see. The rain that fell on Nami's body in an instant after Bucky's words was like an invisible layer of ice, cooling down to her heart. She put down the package that she valued so much just now, and murmured absent-mindedly. No, it is impossible for me to escape his control. As long as the village is still here, one day he will try to put me in that cage, just like today. I see it very clearly. Then there is only one last way left. What else can I do? Nami looked at the phone bug in front of her with a little excitement. This pirate knows a lot of things. Maybe he has a way. Maybe he can save this village. The last path is very simple. Come and beg me to help you, beg me to defeat Aaron. The voice of the phone bug was very calm, as if he was talking about something irrelevant, and there was some banter and carnival at the end. Nami's face froze, and she said without emotion, Are you kidding me? Is this interesting? You are a smart person, you should understand that there is only one chance. If you miss it, you will never meet it again. Nami closed her eyes, faced the phone bug, knelt down on her knees, her head hit the muddy soil, and her pretty orange hair became filthy. Please save my village, I beg you. Buggy on the other end of the phone bug heard a satisfactory answer. A sly smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he said slowly, This is an agreement. Without waiting for a reply, he hung up the phone, walked to the deck, and looked at the sea in the distance. In another day, he will be able to reach the Aaron Empire, which rules more than 20 villages and has the highest bounty for pirates in the East China Sea. Whether this incident is a premeditated plan or a kind help, for Buggy, there is only one purpose, and the most indispensable thing in the sea is an excellent navigator. Even if someone is blocking him in front, he will definitely not stop. In Aaron's Empire Square, the patter of rain continued to fall. Aaron sat on the exclusive seat, his face looked a little hideous. Colonel, I didn't expect you to be bad at even this little thing. Isn't this your territory? How come there are other pirates attacking me? The mouse, whose cheeks were bloated from the beating and looked embarrassed, sneered, and confronted each other without showing any weakness. Your management must have too many loopholes, right? Aaron's cheeks trembled a bit from the choking, then he lay down on the chair and closed his eyes. Black belt, do you know who did it? It seems that a pirate came in yesterday and was seen by the braided fish. It should be a good thing this guy did. The black belt took out a pirate bounty list. On it was a man with wool-like hair and a lion squatting beside him. The bounty below was 3 million Baileys. It's this pirate. Aaron, quickly find a way to get back the 100 million berry. Colonel Mouse looked excited, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on and blew up, and suddenly stood up and roared. Calm down, Colonel. Aaron said dismissively, it's just a humble and weak pirate. Black belt, can you bring him here? Leave it to me, Aaron. I will screw off his blind head, and besides, I will get the money back. The black belt nodded solemnly, and walked out. After walking a few steps, I saw a figure leaping forward, blocking the door with folded arms. The black belt looked at the man in front of him, picked up the reward list and compared it carefully. They were exactly the same. He threw the reward list casually. I never thought you would dare to send it to your door. It's this guy. The mouse on the side quickly stood up. Aaron, catch him quickly. Just because you stinky dried fish want to catch me. Mochi laughed loudly. Come here if you have the ability. Dried stinky fish. The muscles on Aaron's arms exploded layer by layer, and his hands crushed the glass on the table, and said gloomily, What are you bastard talking about? Chu on the side quickly winked at the murlocs around. This guy is deliberately provoking us. Maybe there is some conspiracy. Stop Eren quickly, or this place will be destroyed. The surrounding Murlocs hurriedly pressed Eren's joints. Brother Eren, calm down. Let go of me. I'm going to kill this bastard. I'm going to let him know what it means to regret dying immediately. Just leave it to me, Chirp, you just hold Eren down. Having said that, the eyes of the Black Belt are much more cautious. The other party dared to rush into Eren's Empire Plaza single-handedly. What is his purpose? Dried stinky salted fish. Take a look at my Uncle Mochi's new move, beast taming spinning top. Mochi's whole body spun at high speed, rolling up a burst of smoke and dust, and spreading it out. The surrounding Murlocs held their noses, their hearts pounding, and they warned each other loudly. Hey, that bastard really wants to play some tricks, let's be careful. Don't be fooled by this human being, or you will really lose face. The Black Belt was more cautious, his eyes fixed on the black shadow in the smoke. The man was still standing there, but the lion's shadow was gone. Sure enough, something is wrong. Clang clang. When the smoke and dust were about to disperse, a circus-like opening sound came from the opponent's mouth. The Black Belt looked at the shadow, and his nerves stretched to the extreme. Are you going to launch an offensive? I saw Mochi standing at the door with his hips on his hips and laughing triumphantly. A lion's head emerged from his stomach inexplicably, tilting his head, with a confused look on his face. Wow. Dried stinky salted fish, isn't it scary? Uncle Mochi's new move, belly pouch, a move that can put living things in his stomach. Li Chi, let them see our fusion skills. After Mochi said that, Li Kai seemed to have received an order, and his eyes instantly became sharp. Be careful, this guy is weird. Black Belt stopped an impulsive Murloc, full of vigilance. The Murlocs present took up their weapons one after another and shielded them. Their intuition told them that something was wrong. Mochi's face became ugly, his hands clenched into fists tightly, his veins were intertwined like tree roots, and two hands grew out of his stomach strangely. What is he doing? No, his body has grown two hands. What kind of strange race? No. It's the lion's paw that the lion vacated from inside. Mochi showed a relaxed expression as if he had just finished stretching, and then he and Li Ji found the rhythm point seriously, and put on a posture of a white crane spreading its wings together, half Shira form. Everyone present had black lines all over their faces. What on earth did he do here? White-haired bastard, go to hell. The Black Belt rushed forward, with his right hand raised in front of his chest, ready to strike. The fish fins on both arms allowed him to burst out with strength several times higher than that of ordinary Murlocs. Come and chase me, stinky Murlocs, come and see Lord Mochi's centaur form. Mochi saw the Black Belt rushing towards him, and fled unhurriedly to the distance. Suddenly, two strange feet sprang out from behind, and all 4 feet stepped together, turning into a puff of smoke with a whoosh. This bastard human. Eren jumped into a rage, the veins on his forehead popped up, and he was held tightly by the Murlocs around him. Chirp directed the Murlocs in the square. Follow the Black Belt and go after that bumbling kid. Don't let him escape. Let him have a good taste of life after catching him. Eren sighed as temporarily leave it to me. Yes, Brother Chu. Nearly half of the Murlocs in Eren's Empire Square chased after Ju's order, and it became empty in an instant. Mochi, who fled all the way, laughed loudly, and patted his stomach and Li Ji on the head. This is the strength of our fusion, haha. Suddenly touched his chin as if thinking, is the speed slowed down instead? Li Kai's 2 hind legs kept stepping on the ground, and a drop of cold sweat dripped from the lion's face in a human way. Directly ahead, a tiny, hard-to-distinguish drop of water came mixed in the rain. Mochi, who didn't realize it, suddenly felt that he was knocked back a few meters away before he could use his power in a hurry. There was a scratch on the ground. Chirp came out from the shadow under the tree in front of him. How dare you take a detour? In order to calm Eren's anger as soon as possible, you should go back with me honestly. The Black Belt led a group of Murlocs from behind. You have nowhere to run. Xiao Ba, who was familiar with shortcuts, also surrounded him from the left, pointing at himself with 6 hands in doubt. So Xiao Ba, should I go up too? All the way westward, it was getting closer and closer to the Bakudop of the Eren Empire. Buggy, where's the ingredients for Moses? Shuma suddenly felt a little bored. Kabaji went to the exercise room to exercise, and Kia read a book quietly in the study room. The few remaining pirates who were steering and resting were even more uninteresting. This made him feel a little nostalgic and disappeared for several days. Mochi. We'll see him when we get to Kokoja village. Bucky stood on the deck, looking at the gloomy sky covered with dark clouds, but before that, I still have to ask him to attract the attention of those murlocs. The louder the noise, the better, so we don't have to worry about the murlocs. They attacked us at the bottom of the sea, and if they find out and destroy the ship, it will be troublesome. Shuma had long ignored Bucky's incomprehensible words, stared at the rising waves with wide eyes, and shouted loudly, "Sea beast, it's a sea beast." A cow-like sea beast with white and green markings, tens of meters high, sprang out from the bottom of the sea, revealing half of its body on the surface of the sea. People and animals looked harmlessly at the boat in front of them. Momo. "There's something interesting." Shu Ma, who was bored, his eyes lit up, stepped on moon steps, jumped up a few times in the air, and lay on Momu's head, beating and making a playful sound, "Drive, drive." As if feeling that his dignity had been insulted, Momu's expression became a little irritable, looking like a volcano that was about to erupt. "Hey, are you hungry?" Shuma scratched his head, took out a few destruction peppers that he carried with him, and threw them into the gap in Momu's mouth. Momu's pupils shrank suddenly, a strong heat wave burst out from his huge mouth, and his whole body began to shake the waves. "Hey, that's too bad." Shuma clenched his small fist, and beat Momu's head unceremoniously. Whoa. Momu's huge body was instantly sunk into the bottom of the sea, and the waves rolled alternately, rolling and undulating in all directions. "It's too much strength." Shu Ma stopped in the air and scratched his head embarrassingly. "Wow." Momu's body emerged from the sea again, with a big bag on his head, roaring angrily. Bucky suddenly separated his hand and flew 1 meter away from Momu's eyes. His outstretched index finger hung in the air like a tiny needle tube, and his voice suddenly became gloomy. "If you don't want to be food, just give me peace. Some." Momu's forehead broke out in cold sweat from the terrifying aura that seemed to come from the top of his head and in front of his eyes. His intuition told him that if he resisted, he would end up in danger, so he kept his posture tremblingly and did not dare to move. "Very good." Bucky threw a long rope from the deck towards Shuma. "Put it on, and we can speed it up." The humidity in the air began to increase, and there was a patter of rain on the sea. With the motivation of Momo to open the way ahead, with the sails on the ship with the skull flag printed on it being furled, it took only a few hours to reach the shore. The Bakudop docked smoothly without any hindrance. At first glance, the village is very deserted, and there are hardly any people in sight. I don't know if it's because of the rain or the place is so lifeless. Looking up, the symbolic shark-head tall building of the Aran Empire is looming, and I've been looking at it for a long time. It doesn't feel like it, like a phantom in the rain. This shouldn't be Kokoyashi village. The rain cloak was draped over him, and Bucky looked at Shu Ma, who was forcibly pulling Momo to play in the water. "Shu Ma, the task of guarding the boat will be entrusted to you." "Ah." Shuma sat on the head of Momo, who was streaming with tears, and patted his chest. "Leave it to me. Uncle Bucky, I also want to go out and have a look." Kia put on a light yellow cloak, and walked to the shore along the rope ladder on the ship. I don't know if it was because of the weather. She felt very depressed recently. Maybe it was because she stayed in the study for too long reading medical books. "My mind is a little dizzy." "Then let's come together." Bucky greeted, and waited for her to keep up with him before continuing to walk forward with Kabaji. Walking along the empty village road, the raindrops hit the ground, covering a thin layer of dust on the bluestone slabs. At a glance, the dense spider webs by the window of the house have been covered by layers of fine raindrops. It was smashed, and there was no trace of people in the open door of the small yard. There were some old fishing and agricultural tools leaning against the corner, and the scenery was depressing. "It's so deserted, completely different from the bustle of Zailuobu village," Kaya said, quite touched. "Can't you smell it? There is a faint smell of blood in the air. If it weren't for the rain, I'm afraid this smell would last for a long time." Bucky responded indifferently. Kaya exclaimed in disbelief. "Uncle Bucky, you mean? If my guess is correct, everyone in this village should have been killed, and there are traces of looting everywhere. It's been at least a month. If there is a village next door, maybe they collected the corpses." Kaya covered her mouth in pain, tears rolled in her eyes. Why is this? Survival and death are like this. If you are in an overly weak position, you will inevitably be dominated by the strong, or even killed." Kabaji interjected indifferently. As the first group of veterans who followed Bucky, he himself had his own understanding of this sea, whether it was the despicable methods he used in the early days or the idea of becoming stronger now, to survive on this sea. It is undeniable what Kabaji said, that this world is actually a world where the weak and the strong prey on the strong. "Kia, you should have eaten the meat of other animals. If you can eat it with peace of mind, it means that your subconscious mind agrees with this concept. For them, in other words, we are powerful, so we can deprive them of their lives indifferently. Of course, these two things cannot be generalized. But Kia bit her lower lip. Bucky was right, but she couldn't and didn't dare to accept this point of view. Bucky continued. It's not that innocent people can be killed indiscriminately. I personally still hold the opinion that animals with advanced intelligence and communication skills are equal, but the instigators don't think so. The world will always be full of irreconcilable contradictions. The consequences are roughly the same. I am just conveying the information I have seen and heard to you. You should learn to make your heart stronger during the journey. It seemed that because of the sound of walking and talking, a strange gaze shot from not far away and fell on him. Looking sideways, it was a boy hiding in the shadow of the alley with half of his head sticking out. You are human. The little boy came out cautiously. He looked haggard, thin, and a little depressed. After walking a few steps, he started to stagger, and then fell to the ground. Kaya was still thinking about what Bucky said, but was suddenly awakened by the sound of splashing mud and water, looked up, and ran up to help the little boy in a panic. Are you okay? I'm fine. The rather miserable-looking little boy struggled to stand up and shouted at Bucky and the others. Is there a doctor? Is there a doctor to save my sister? His only voice echoed in the sound of ticking raindrops, and no one answered. Is there a doctor to save my sister, please? He repeated the same words, with anxiety and panic mixed in his weak voice. All eyes fell on the somewhat hesitant Kaya. Are you a doctor? Are you a doctor, big sister? The little boy couldn't tell the tears from the rain on his face, and looked at Kia as if he was grabbing a life-saving straw. Kaya, who was not very confident, looked at Bucky as if he had no backbone, and remembered what the latter said just now, and finally nodded with determination. I am a doctor. That's great. Big sister, please save my little sister. I see, you take me there, I will find a way. She's had a fever for several days. The little boy hurriedly took Kaya's hand, ran to a house, and disappeared in the rain. Captain Bucky, do you want to let her go? Kabaji hesitated to speak, but still said. It's okay. Let's go. Bucky shrugged, and walked along the trail leaning against the village. The two continued to move forward, passing through half of the village along the way. Except for the little boy who didn't know how to survive, there was no living person here. I can't smell it anymore because my nose has adapted to the smell. Aaron. This is really a cruel guy who slaughtered the entire village. His character is definitely more cruel and evil than in the original book. That's right. This is a real world after all. It's not uncommon for an extreme racist like him to do such a thing, especially when the Navy is letting it go. He is obviously more unscrupulous. He doesn't look like a pirate, but an emperor who holds the power of life and death for everyone in the nearby villages. Aaron Empire. Well-deserved reputation. Bucky didn't know what to think in his heart. He was not a cold-blooded person. He had sympathy for these civilians whose positions and interests were not in line with his. Although he didn't have a heart of fraternity, he didn't have any interest in killing ordinary people. Seeing such behavior, I feel more disgusted than angry. Aaron, who has inherited the dark side of Murloc Tiger, is really an annoying bastard. Kabaji was beside him, and he had been a pirate with Bucky for so many years, but he never did excessive violence to civilians. Seeing the contrast between the densely packed houses and the desolate streets in the village, he couldn't help being shocked. This is the Aaron Empire. What? Bucky said jokingly. Who would have thought that in the East China Sea, which is known as the most peaceful sea area, there is such a place, cruel, chaotic and cold, and the rusted buildings from the bottom will sooner or later endanger the upper floors. And finally collapsed, smashed to pieces. I didn't say the last sentence, but put it in my heart. This is a chaotic world that is about to reach its peak. In this depressing land, there is a long drizzle, which will affect people's mood more or less. Along the way, Bucky picked up the phone bug and dialed the phone. Mochi. Where are you now? You are Bucky, haha. There was a strange laugh from the other side, not Mochi. Bucky was silent for a while, and said, before asking someone else's name, shouldn't you give your own name first? What an interesting human pirate. After saying this, the other end of the phone bug was filled with all kinds of mocking laughter. Dozens of people were laughing at the same time, and then these voices stopped at the same time and changed back to the original voice. I am Aaron. There is a stupid pirate trying to challenge my authority, but I saved his life. Bucky, if you want him to live, bring your head and 100 million Baileys to the Aaron Empire, ha ha. Pods. The phone bug's eyes closed and there was no more sound. The white-haired monster has been caught. Kabaji clicked his tongue twice without any sense of crisis, and said gloatingly, "This idiot really did something outrageous." "The movement of Mochi Lane seems to be a bit louder," Bucky said in a low voice, "but in the final analysis, it's my fault that I didn't think carefully about this matter. After all, the opponent is a murloc who came down from the Great Root, and he is not as easy to deal with as he imagined." "Then what should we do, Captain Bucky?" Bucky stopped, pondered for a while, and said, "His purpose is to get back the 100 million Baileys and eliminate me as a foreign hidden danger. Mochi, who was used as a bait to lure us, will not be life-threatening at present, but we also can't hand over the initiative, since he threatened us with Mochi, then we will deal with him in the same way. If he wants to manage such a large territory, it is impossible for his subordinates to stay together. There must be murlocs who disperse management and monitor patrols. If we can catch a few fish that slip through the net, we may be able to take the initiative back. Chips. But Aaron will not care about the life and death of his subordinates." Kabaji asked suspiciously, "There are too many such pirates, and it can be seen in the East China Sea. The higher the reward, the more cold-blooded the pirates are. Crow, Creek, and Bucky before such middle-aged people. No, these murlocs are the basis for him to build an empire in the East China Sea. If one dies, there will be fewer murlocs. There are few murlocs in the East China Sea. In addition, he is an extremist himself. Once the number of his subordinates decreases, he cannot supplementing manpower from human beings will greatly reduce the dominance of external expansion, and according to common sense, he will not take this risk." Listening to Bucky's analysis, Kabaji suddenly nodded. "So, as long as we can capture those scattered murlocs, we can get back the idiot Mochi." "That's right. But now I don't know where Aaron's bottom line is. 1 murloc, 2 murlocs, 3 murlocs, or more. When he feels distressed, we can regain the initiative." Bucky continued. "Well, let's split up. Although Mochi is the bait on the hook, we can't overestimate the patience of Aaron, a fisherman. There is not much time left for us. After half a day." He looked up at the location of the looming high tower. "Let's gather at that location." After summing up, they split up and started the murloc capture plan. In a cellar somewhere in the village, a faint candlelight flickered, and the smell of fruits and vegetables was everywhere. A girl who was breathing weakly, about 3 or 4 years old, was lying on a bed made of shelves with white lips, covered with a cotton quilt, looking very uncomfortable. Green bubbles of table tennis balls popped out of Kia's palm. She stirred the bubbles in the cup, opened the girl's mouth carefully, and slowly poured the liquid into it. The little girl's throat moved slightly, her expression relaxed a lot, and her breathing became much more stable and even. Kia secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Diseases and injuries in the body are 2 different systems. She is not sure whether her ability is effective, but now it seems that this ability should have a certain effect on the internal injuries of the human body. She wiped the cold sweat from her forehead, then applied the water bag on the girl's forehead, and then took a medical kit that the boy dug out from the smashed and destroyed village clinic. Her eyes glanced, and her hands trembled. "Take all kinds of needles and medicines that are not marked in the medical kit." "I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor," Kia said to herself silently in her heart, trying to keep her emotions calm, and tremblingly held a dose of medicine tube in front of her eyes to watch. Even though she had read a lot of medical books, theory and practice are completely different things. The experience is completely zero, and the mentality is not as calm as usual. The little boy held back his tears and dared not make a sound. His name was Callus, and he was born in Nisa village. Until a month ago, the villagers could no longer bear Aaron's endless conquests. In the end, everyone was killed mercilessly. He hid in the cellar with his 3-year-old sister in his arms, and only managed to escape the disaster. It was the day when the murlocs invaded. He and his younger sister hid in the cellar for a whole day without making a sound, and waited for the group of murlocs to leave, only to find that their heads were dizzy, and the 3-year-old younger sister's resistance was even stronger. Poor. When I found out about her abnormality, my sister had already fallen into a coma, and the illness had lasted for more than a month. The murlocs I could see outside from time to time made me dare not bring my sister to the ground for fear of being killed. In this adverse environment, the condition worsened, and finally he had to risk running out to find help. It wasn't until Kia ordered that the vegetables and fruits in the cellar were emptied, that Callus knew that these foods robbed him of air. Long-term cerebral hypoxia was the source of coma. Weather changes in the harsh environment of the cellar caused my sister to have a fever and infection. No. There is no medicine to reduce fever and relieve illness. Kia put down the medical kit, looked at the little girl's eyelids and tongue slightly, and looked at Callus with difficulty. I don't know. How long can her ability last, but if she continues like this, she will die soon. Then what to do? Callus' face was full of tears, and he bit his lower lip to prevent himself from crying too much. If it weren't for his sister, the only spiritual support, he would have collapsed in the pain of losing his parents and neighbors. The feeling of being depended on and regarded as the backbone made Kia feel inexplicable. She seemed to see the crying and stubborn self in the past, and suddenly remembered what Buggy said just now. You should learn to make your heart strong during the journey. She took a deep breath, and put her hands on the little boy's shoulders. Don't worry, there must be a village nearby, and there must be a medical clinic there. As long as you get there, there will be a solution. The little boy choked up and said, the nearest place is Kokoja village, but, there will definitely be those bastard murlocs blocking the way, and, my sister. Even if you stay here, your sister's condition will not improve. If you send it to the hospital, we still have hope, don't give up. For the first time, Kia felt that she was speaking like an adult, with a sense of firmness and maturity. Callus wiped away tears firmly. Okay, I will listen to you, big sister. Hearing the other party's promise, Kaya wrapped the little girl in a thick quilt, carefully hugged her in her arms, and asked Callus to open the door of the cellar and walk out in the wind and rain. At the intersection of Kokoyasi village and Nisa village, two strange figures walked on the road. One was a brown murloc about 2 meters tall, and the other was a thin white murloc. Show you, brother Aaron really has a bad temper. He raised that Nisa village to the ground if he disagreed with him. We lost a place to collect taxes. Who made these stubborn humans ignorant of dignity? They are obviously a lowly race, but they think they can fight against our noble murlocs. Fat fish, don't you sympathize with them? Don't make such a nutritious joke. How can I sympathize with human beings? They are just tools for us to make money. While the two were chatting casually, there was a movement in the grass in front, and fallen leaves fell down from the tree trunk beside the grass. The eyes of the two fell on the grass in doubt, then they looked at each other, picked up the machete behind their backs, and walked forward lightly. 10 meters, 5 meters, getting closer. The fat fish's flippers stepped on the puddles on the ground, and there was a sound of splashing water. Suddenly, the movement in the grass became louder, and two figures, one big and one small, flashed out and fled away in a panic. Human beings with bad intentions. The skinny fish let out a loud roar, and sped up his pace to rush up. On this kind of uneven and water-stained road, the murloc was able to play faster than humans, and in just a few blinks, he caught up with those two roads. The frail figure raised the machetes in both hands high in front of him, and slashed at the light blonde-haired woman. Puff. A magnificent blood flower flashed in the rain. The movement of Slim Fish's hand stopped abruptly at this moment, and he looked down at the finger that pierced his chest unwillingly. With that finger pulled out, he felt his vitality was continuously draining, and then he collapsed powerlessly on the ground. A palm quickly retracted in the air and returned to Bucky's wrist. He dragged the fat fish who had been knocked on the back of the neck with his hand and lost consciousness, and looked solemnly towards Kia and Callus, who were panting for the rest of their lives. How come you are here? Uncle Bucky. This girl is dying, we are going to send her to a medical clinic in another village. Kaya glanced at the girl in her arms who was getting worse and worse, and looked up anxiously at Bucky. Can you escort us to Kokoyasi village? Bucky glanced at the two of them from the corner of his eye, and responded calmly. Do you think it's really possible to rely on the strength of others for the rest of your life? It's better to stumble, and sometimes it will be smooth sailing. Yes. I understand. Kaya was stunned for a moment, didn't say much, and continued to move forward with Callus on the side. Her eyes became much firmer. Yes, I have to rely on my own strength. I will use my own strength to protect this life. Looking at Kia's disappearing figure, Bucky pondered for a moment, and followed behind her, dragging the fainted fat fish. When they arrived at the entrance of Kokoja village, they didn't see any more murlocs along the way. Bucky stopped following Kaya and continued to look for prey who walked alone. At the entrance of the village stood a man with stitch marks all over his face, wearing a windmill hat, looking at the rainy scene in the distance with ecstasy. Kaya held the girl in her arms and ran up, and asked anxiously, Hello. Where is the medical office in the village? The man was slightly taken aback, and looked down. Uncle Jian. Callus saw the familiar face, and quickly grabbed his arm. Hurry up and save my sister. Callus. Jian suddenly came back to his senses, quickly scanned the situation in front of him. Come with me. Jian took the two of them to the clinic in the center of the village. The clinic occupies a small area, but most of the necessary medical equipment and medicines are also complete. In this rural area, it can be regarded as advanced. Get Gao, come out quickly, there are patients here. Ah Jian pushed open the door of the clinic and shouted into the empty room. Dr. Nagao is not here. He went to the orange orchard. I heard that Nuo Kagao was injured. Assistant Jerome came out of the cubicle. Nuo Kagao was injured. Ah Jian was shocked, and then said to Keiya, "You guys go directly to the orange orchard with me, Nagao is there." Keiya's hands holding the little girl were already a little numb. The long journey made her very tired, but what made her more nervous was the little girl's condition, so she followed closely behind Ah Jian. It only took about 10 minutes to travel from the center of the village to the orange orchard on the outskirts of the village. There were signs of looting everywhere in the orange grove, and the orange leaves on the trees looked a bit unspirited. Nami. Ah Jian had a bad feeling in his heart, and walked into the hut with a heavy heart and anxiety. With only one eye, Nuo Kagao was lying on the bed in a coma. Mikkel and Nami sat aside worriedly, staring at Nuo Kagao without blinking. To the door. Hearing the footsteps at the door, everyone turned their gazes to Jian and the others in unison. There was not much emotion on their faces, only Mikkel was slightly surprised. How could the eldest lady in this villa appear here? Ah Jian stared blankly at Nuo Kagao on the bed. His heart seemed to be blocked by something, and his breathing was so short that he seemed to be unable to breathe. He didn't forget the purpose of coming here now. Nago. These are the Callis brothers and sisters from Nisa village. They are seriously ill. Take a look. Hey, good. Nagao quickly hugged the little girl in Kia's arms and brought her to the back room. Kia and Callis followed quickly. After arriving in the back room, Nagao didn't delay much, took out the stethoscope and various medical tools, and began to check the little girl's condition. Her condition is very bad, such a weak body, you actually brought her here. While checking, Nagao said in disbelief, however, there seems to be a magical force in her body that is fighting and growing. If it wasn't for this force, she might have died in such a heavy wind and rain. Doctor, is she saved? Kia asked anxiously. This matter was her decision. If the little girl died because of her decision, her conscience would feel guilty for a long time. For a moment, she once again felt the psychological burden of being a decision maker, shouldering the expectations and beliefs of others. There is still salvation, her vitality is very tenacious, leave it to me. Nagao nodded solemnly. Hearing Nagao's words, Kia lost her strength and almost fell to the ground, so she quickly supported the wooden frame beside her. In the next hour, Nagao mixed and prepared herbs with different shapes, and prepared the dosage of the medicine, including the interval between each injection with a syringe and the content of the oral medicine. Kia, who was standing next to him, watched intently. Keeping it firmly in mind, the concept of doctor gradually became clear. Take 1 dose of these 3 herbs every day. After 3 days, she should wake up. Nagao wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve and said out of breath. Patients have kept him busy until now. The little girl's pale face gradually turned red under the effect of the drug, as if she had fallen asleep, and her expression became much more peaceful. There is only one update today. Forgive me for the handicap. It took 3 or 4 hours to write a chapter after Kawan got stuck, and I am not full-time, so I am sorry for the power to remind you. Also, generally speaking, it is very possible for those who say they don't know how to be eunuch, but I'm different, I don't say it. Nagao walked out of the back room, and said softly and helplessly outside, I'll go back first, there may be patients waiting for me in the clinic, as for Nuo Kagao, I've tried my best, when I can wake up, it's all up to her by myself. In the silence of several people, the door of the house was opened and then gently closed. The doctor took the high away. Whether it is the inner room or the outer hall, there is an oppressive silence, which can be heard like a needle falling. Because of the devil fruit, although Keiya's physique slowly recovered under the influence of the sun, she was quite exhausted from running, avoiding, and worrying about the little girl for a long time. She closed her eyes, afraid that if she fell asleep, it would take several days to relax her care for the little girl. This is probably the so-called sense of mission. She looked at Callis, who was lying on the corner of the bed, and fell asleep in a daze, and carefully covered him with a thin quilt on the bed. In order to keep herself awake, she stood up and walked back and forth. Afraid of waking up, Lisi walked out of the back room lightly. Compared with the situation in the back room, the living room was even more lifeless. Uncle Jian, who brought her, was sitting on a small wooden chair beside him, with his arms resting on his knees, supporting his head, just like the other 2 girls with their backs turned. I can't see the expression, but it is conceivable that their mood will definitely not be too good. Keiya walked over and looked around with her eyelids slightly raised. The chest and shoulders of the purple-haired girl on the bed were wrapped with bandages, her eyes were closed, and her face did not change. At first glance, Her symptoms were somewhat similar to that of the little girl. Are all fevers caused by external conditions? It's just that the little girl fell into a coma due to long-term lack of oxygen in the rather humid and harsh environment in the basement, while the purple-haired girl in front of her seemed to be caused by a strong trauma, infection, and sudden temperature change. Uncle. Kya approached slowly. Can I check on her situation? I may have a way. Aegean raised his head. 2 turbid tears fell silently on his face, and nodded with difficulty. Nami and Mikkel, who were guarding the bedside, closed their lips tightly, stepped back a distance, and watched silently and vigilantly. It's elegant. Don't be so nervous. Kya shook her hand quickly, trying to dispel the doubts of Nami and the two of them. Green bubbles appeared in her palm, and she said amidst the surprised expressions of the 3 of them, I just ate a kind of miraculous food. The ability obtained from the fruit. This kind of bubble is my ability. It can heal trauma. Maybe it will be effective. Fruit. Ability. Mikkel is from the Great Airline, and has heard about capable people, but he is ignorant of the source of their abilities. Listening to Kya's narration, a series of things in her mind are connected together. The fruit stolen from the Navy. I won't do bad things, please trust me. Kya bowed solemnly, and pressed the ping-pong ball-sized bubble into Nuo Chigao's chest. Cough. Cough. Nuo Kagao suddenly coughed twice, and after a while, he opened his eyes as if he had gotten better, and uttered a few inaudible words like the sound of mosquitoes from his pale lips. After getting along for so many years, Nami didn't know what the other party wanted to say. She wiped her tears and grabbed the other party's palm. The treasure has been taken back, and I hid it. Don't worry. Nuo Kagao nodded weakly. Mikkel looked at Nuo Kagao in surprise, then shook Kya's body excitedly. Please, use that ability to heal Nuo Kagao again. Kya was dizzy from the shaking of her head, and smiled wryly. Her body is too weak, it will backfire. Mikkel Chick nodded like pecking at rice. Nami. As early as in the conversation just now, Aegean knew everything. He stood up and said, because of the resistance to the Murlocs in Nisa village just a month ago, everyone was killed. Only the 2 people in the middle are left. A sibling survived. Aegean. Nami's eyes touched. I know, we can't disobey those Murlocs, otherwise all our hard work over the years will be in vain. No, I mean. Aegean clenched his fists. 1 Nisa village fell, but there will be countless Kokoyasi villages standing up. Instead of living in humiliation, it is better for us to die together. We have already letting you fight alone for so many years has always made you suffer more terrible pain than death. We have also thought about such a result. Since Aaron did not give the answer we wanted, we will let him see our will. No, I've asked that big pirate Buggy for help. He will definitely help us, Jian, to live. Don't be impulsive. Nami begged. Jian tried his best to control his temper. Navy and pirates are unreliable. Why would he help us, if he doesn't come for a day? Are we just waiting here for a day? Uncle Buggy is here. Kya couldn't help interrupting. You. Jian was startled. Kya said, I am currently the doctor on his ship. I don't know why this place has become like this, but I can feel your pain. Believe me, he is very strong, and he will definitely save you. Jian resolutely said, since he is here to defeat Aaron, we should support him. We did it once more than 7 years ago to hide behind others and be a coward, and now we can't do it again. After all, he pushed open the door without hesitation and walked outside. Aegean. Nami hurriedly chased her out. Nami. Uncle Jian. Mikkel, who didn't know what to say, murmured complicatedly, and looked back at Kya. How did you end up on that red-nosed boat? Me. Kya looked at the girl who didn't look like a human being in front of her. In Usopp's story, she had seen all kinds of animals, and she didn't think the other person looked strange, so she responded calmly. At that time, I suddenly had a feeling in my heart that his ship could carry my dream and sail forever. As he spoke, he looked at the girl in front of him suspiciously. Do you know me? No. I don't know. Mikkel shook his head slightly, silently recited Kya's words, feeling touched in his heart. Dream. Is similar to the dream that Nami talked about. It really makes the cat a little envious. After being dazed for a while, Mikkel held Kya's hand and said pleadingly, I want to see the fight between that red-nosed Murloc and the evil Murloc, and I also want to do something for this village and Nami. Can you help the cat take care of Nuo Kagao, Miss Lemonbubble? No problem. Hearing some cute nicknames, Kya showed a determined look. Leave it to me. Taking care of patients is a doctor's bounden duty. Mikkel didn't care about thanking him. Like a wild cat that had run loose, he sprinted out lightly.